The following podcast was recorded on January 6, 2024. Audio from external sources is used throughout this episode. Please note that the opinions, ideas, and theories proposed by these sources may not necessarily reflect the views of the Sovryn Tech X hosts. Thanks for listening.
Power on.
The following is a presentation of the Sovryn Technica podcast feed.
The only thing you need to know to understand the deepest metaphysical secrets is this: that for every outside there is an inside, and for every inside there is an outside. And although they are different, they go together. There is, in other words, a secret conspiracy between all insides and all outsides, and the conspiracy is this: to look as different as possible, and yet underneath to be identical. Because you don't find one without the other. Like Tweedledum and Tweedledee agreed to have a battle. Note that, agreed. So there is a secret. What is esoteric, what is profound, and what is deep is what we will call the implicit. What is obvious and on the open is what we will call the explicit. And I and my environment, you and your environment, are explicitly as different could be. But implicitly, you go together. And this is discovered by the scientist when he tries, as the whole art of science is to describe what happens exactly. And when he describes exactly what you do, he finds out that your behavior is not something that can be separated from the behavior of the world around you. He realizes then that you are something that the whole world is doing. Just as when the sea has waves on it, all right, the sea, the ocean is waving. And so each one of us is a waving of the whole cosmos, the entire works, all there is. And with each one of us, it's waving and saying, "Yoo-hoo, here I am." Only it does it differently each time. Because variety is the spice of life. But you see, the funny thing is, we haven't been brought up to feel that way. Instead of feeling that we, each one of us, are something that the whole realm of being is doing, we feel that we are something that has come into the whole realm of being as a stranger. When we were born, we don't really know where we came from, because we don't remember. And we think when we die, that's just going to be that. Some people console themselves with the idea that they're going to heaven, or that they're going to be reincarnated, or they're going to Summerland or something, you know. People don't really believe that. For most people, it's plausible. The real thing that haunts them is that when they die, they're going to sleep and never going to wake up. They're going to be locked up in the safe deposit box of darkness forever. But that all depends, you see, upon a false notion of what is oneself. Now, the reason why we have this false notion of ourselves is, as far as I can understand it, that we have specialized in one particular kind of consciousness. Being very general and rough, we have two kinds of consciousness. One I will call the spotlight, and the other the floodlight. The spotlight is what we call conscious attention. And that is trained into us from childhood as the most valuable form of consciousness. When the teacher in class says, "Pay attention," everybody stares. He looks fast at the teacher like that. That's spotlight consciousness. Fixing your mind on one thing at a time. Concentrate. And even though you may not be able to have a very long attention span, nevertheless you concentrate. You use your spotlight, one thing after another, one thing after another. Flip, 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 like that. But we also have another kind of consciousness, which I'll call the floodlight. For example, you can drive your car for several miles with a friend sitting next to you, and your spotlight consciousness will be completely absorbed in talking to your friend. Nevertheless, your floodlight consciousness will manage the driving of the car, will notice all the stoplights, the other idiots on the road, and so on, and you'll get there safely, without even thinking about it. But our culture has taught us to specialize in spotlight consciousness and to identify ourselves with that form of consciousness alone. I am my spotlight consciousness. My conscious attention, that is my ego, that is me. And very largely we ignore the floodlight. Now the floodlight consciousness is working all the time. Every nerve end that we have is its instrument. Now, because we have been brought up to identify ourselves with the spotlight consciousness, and the floodlight consciousness is undervalued, we have the sensation of ourselves as being just the spotlight. Just the ego that looks and attends to this and that and the other. And so we ignore and are unaware of the vast, vast extent of our being. People who by various methods become fully aware of their floodlight consciousness have what is called a mystical experience or a cosmic consciousness, because they discover that the real deep, deep self, that which you really are fundamentally and forever, is the whole of being. All that there is, the works, that's you. Just as a sun or star has many rays, so the whole cosmos expresses itself in you, in you, in you, in you, in you, with all the different variations. It dances with infinite variety. But every single dance that it does, that is to say, you, is what the whole thing is doing. But you see, we forget it. We don't know. We've been brought up in a special way, so that we are unaware of the connection. The external world is your own body extended.
Woo! The Man of Tomorrow is here for some Sovryn Tech X action, which would be STX action, which kind of sounds like sex action, but that's not exactly what we're getting into here. But
I am here for it.
Oh, you're here for Sovryn Tech X, or you're here for the sex action?
All of it.
Wait. What's that huge oh dear. That's all right. Well, we won't talk about some of the stuff that's laying around in the studio right now. I mean, unless you want to.
There's a lot of toys in here.
Yeah, wow. Well, it's the warmest place in the house, so, when we want to...
set up a Skeletor diorama.
Oh, yes, when we want to do that.
This is the room we come to.
Yes, not like role play as Skeletor and Evil Lynn and... anyway, the things we never got to see on in animation. So yes,
it's a damn shame,
and it is a damn shame because all those people were jacked. And all right, but it is time for Sovryn Tech X, and as you can see, or should I say, as you can hear, certainly we'll be getting into some things that we've seen. But as you can hear, I am being joined by none other than my incredible, stunning wife,
Woo!
Mrs. Ellen Sovryn.
Thank you.
Yes, welcome to the show. And, we do plan on doing these weekly.
Well, that was the idea, but I think we got caught up, at least in the last couple weeks. You had a lot of pre-recorded episodes.
Yes, they had to go out.
Yeah, we also did an episode with Sek Magora of the Agora podcast.
Yep, the Into the Void, which
Yes.
was a great time. And I think we've got
It
some
was.
other stuff planned for that as well. But yeah, we got kind of caught up in the holidays,
As it happens.
As it happens, yeah. I mean, people, for whatever reason, seem to like us, and they...
They want to spend time with us.
yeah. It's
Talk to us and see us.
Yeah. Which, by the way, we actually, speaking of Sek, we got to hang out with Sek, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, we
That
met
was-
him in person.
What a chill-ass dude. So cool. Got to hang out with him and the family. That was a great time. I really enjoyed that.
It was so nice.
Yeah. In a very, very magical place. And I'll leave it at that. and I mean, a well-recognized magical place. But anyway.
All he wanted to do was talk about weird shit that he had seen on his travels.
Yeah, it was so great. I love that. I love that so much.
It was really fun.
Yes. Yeah. I even got to translate some Hebrew while we were there. Anyway, so, speaking of podcasts, a couple things I guess I want to open up with. And we're going to talk about, you've been reading some great shit.
Oh, hell yes.
Yes, yeah, and I want to talk about some of that. I know you're far from done with the book, but I want to get into that. We're actually just coming off of seeing Aquaman 2, which
hours ago.
Yeah, just hours ago, which we may talk about and get into review later on in the episode. We'll save that. And we have a couple subjects that we might be able to get into. One of them we'll definitely get into. I don't know if we'll get into both, but they do play off of each other very well. Things that we wanted to get into in our last Sovereign Tech X episode that had to do with manifesting and internet culture and all that.
But we talk a lot, so we'll see what we get to in this episode.
Precisely. So, but what I do want to open up with is we actually, and this is one of the most exciting things, frankly, for me, probably 5, 6, 7 years. We are working on a new show.
Yes.
And I'm not going to go into too many details. This is a show that's going to launch soon, though. But we are working on a new show. I'm really jazzed for this. And the one thing I will say about it, and this gets into another quick topic, is this new show is going to have video. Like, I am going to be on video. I am going to do video. This is going to be as much as a podcast as it'll be. It's also going to be on YouTube. So this is a big deal. Now, here's the thing, okay? To do this level of production, and hey, if you've been listening to Sovereign Tech for a long time, you know the levels of production I can bring.
You do some epic productions.
I can.
And I can't wait for those to be re-released in the feed.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get those. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff we got going on. Yeah. So, but here's the rub. Here's the rub with all this. So this new show, trust me, this is something that will be exceptionally rare. Like, there are not a lot of people doing this. And, I'm going to bring my usual, and you also will be a part of it, Ellen.
Yes, I'll be a regular co-host.
Yeah. We're going to bring our, shall we say, rare brand, we don't do hot takes. Like, they're not hot takes. This is just people that are, like, removed from the normalcy of civilization, that come with the knowledge that base that you and I have. And, we bring our opinions to things. We're not contrarian for contrarian's sake. Sadly, that's what a lot of journalists and, podcasters and whatever else are. No, this is how we really live and how we really think. And, this is shit that we're going to get out there. What do you got?
Yeah, I feel like we've lived a long time in mainstream culture, or at least we had spent many years enjoying, what people consider to be normal modern lives.
Yeah.
And out of that, we kind of, spun out of it and kind of fell by the wayside. And we have, these experiences, but we don't want to go back to that lifestyle, and we're going in a different direction with our lives in the future.
Yep.
And I'm trying to not give it away, but kind of explain it a little.
You're certainly teasing.
This is life philosophy that we've gathered over many years of living in civilization, and also reading about, prior to modern day civilization.
Yeah, exactly. So, this is going to be some rare air that we're going to be putting out there. And I'm really excited for it. There is a rub to it all, though. And that is to do this right, to give this what it needs. Paradoxically, I need new equipment. Like I don't have at this stage. I don't have the hardware to make this happen. Or at least to get it to the level that it needs to be. So for the first time ever in my podcasting career, I am doing a GoFundMe to get the equipment that's necessary. Again, video is going to be... It's not like I don't have experience in video. I actually have a ton of experience in video. But, to do video... What do you got?
You just want to make it more convenient for yourself. And it's not like you haven't done similar things in the past. Like, I think you used to have a wish list that people could purchase things for you from.
Yep.
But they were generally, lower priced items.
Yeah. But some of it is still equipment that I use today.
Right.
And that continues to get used.
And your fans have really enabled you to make amazing content with that equipment.
Yeah. So, we're looking at new microphones. We're looking at, obviously, high-end cameras. We're looking at, perhaps the most important piece of kit is a new computer, and a new laptop. So it's something that can be done on the move. And so I am doing a GoFundMe to help put all of this together. Now, all of this equipment doesn't just get used for the new show. It also gets used for everything that I do, all the content that I create, and we'll put that out there, we'll allow that to go out there more. But this is no joke. Like this stuff's already mapped out, already planned out. And I'm really excited for it. It's just something that, again, to do it right, to get all of the stuff, done as it should be, and to hopefully attract more of the audience, which, the audience, we're fortunate in a lot of ways today with how we can make things. Like now, I think audiences, consumers, whatever you want to call them, viewers, say with video, they're used to seeing a microphone in the shot. Okay, as to where, 10 years ago even, oh no, you can't see the microphone, but you'd always get shitty audio because of that. It's like now people kind of get it. No, this is what a studio looks like. This is how professionals record and all of this. Like they understand. So, in some ways it's easier because I don't have to spend the money to buy equipment that hides that the equipment's there. No, in this case, you can see the fucking equipment, and it's important for people to see it, and it's how they know that you're a professional. What you're doing. Like it's part of that package. So anyway, I am doing a GoFundMe to fund getting the new machine, getting new equipment, all of that jazz. And if I don't meet the goal that I am looking at, GoFundMe still let whatever people donate, it still gives you that amount. And obviously any amount helps. I don't sneeze at any amount. I have people who donate with Patreon. They still, they donate $1 a month. And I couldn't tell you how honored I am by that. Like I always say, if people are willing to pay any amount of money to listen to your opinions, you consider yourself lucky. Like the honor you should feel for that. So anyway, you can go to fundraiser.sovryntech.com, and that will take you right to the GoFundMe page. And I tell the story there, and of what this is about, what it goes to, and I'm not going into details of what the new show is. That will wait, and there will be teases and trailers and everything when that time comes. And really excited for this, especially to have you so integral and so involved, Ellen. Like I'm so jazzed for it. But yeah, I mean, and I know this will probably shock people, but I mean, I'm going, yep, we're getting a MacBook Pro. Like, we're doing the real shit, with video. And again, that's fundraiser.sovryntech.com. Making sure I'm getting that right. Fundraiser.sovryntech.com. That'll take you right to the GoFundMe page. GoFundMe does certain things to make sure, the person's legit or whatever. But if you need to hear it, here it is from me. And I'm also, people can reach out to me if they want to for any reason personally. Q22@nwo.red. I'm on Telegram. People know how to reach me there. All kinds of places. And of course, if you're a patron already, you know how to reach me through Discord, you name it.
And you're on Instagram.
And exactly. Just go to nwo.red and you can find all that shit anyway. I should have just said that in the first place, right? Because I am on Instagram as well, verified on Instagram, in fact. I have my little blue check mark, so you don't get that without your identity being verified. So by all means, check in if you want to make sure. But this is really, really exciting stuff that we have coming up. Okay. So all of that said, speaking of really, really exciting stuff, I want to talk about the book that you have been reading, Ellen. This is a book that came out in December of 2023, very early on. You jumped on it right away. I also, got my copy on Audible and everything. And it's something it's an author that we have been a fan of and have covered many times over on the show. Especially when you've been on, but I've talked about it separately as well. That being Dr. Michael Greger of nutritionfacts.org. Yeah. And, he has written a few bestsellers to date, including How Not to Die, How Not to Diet, How to Survive a Pandemic, which is a phenomenal read. All three of those books are phenomenal reads. He's written a bunch of other books too, like Carbophobia, which was really good.
And boy, do I want to talk about this. Yeah. I am so excited. God, I love every single one of Dr. Greger's books.
He's great.
Yes.
He's dynamite. All right, so tell me about it.
Yeah, him and his whole team.
Yeah.
So I tell you about this book all the time because I listen to it on my drive home from work. So I've got like 45 minutes of Dr. Greger in my head every single day.
Right.
And I'm learning new things all the time. It's so great. So How Not to Age is kind of a remix on How Not to Die and How Not to Diet, but it has a very specific focus, and that is, what are the aging pathways in our biology, and what diet can we eat to contribute to the health of those aging pathways so that aging is slowed.
Right.
It's not necessarily claiming that there's any miraculous cures for aging out there. It's more so just saying if you want aging to progress slowly and if you want to live a long lifespan but also a healthy lifespan, then these are the tips that you can follow. These are the rules that you can live by in order to do so. Because there's a lot of people in the world that don't want to live a long life because they think the last 20 years they're going to be decrepit.
Right.
But it doesn't have to be that way.
Right.
You can still age in a very healthy way and be spry and full of life when you're in your 80s. And I don't think most people realize or necessarily want that for themselves. Like, they don't even know that that's something they can want for themselves.
Yeah, I mean, just for quick evidence, William Shatner. Like, whatever the fuck he did in his life... Like, talk about being spry in your 80s. This guy just doesn't stop, I mean, it's insane. So, just to say, like, people can write this book today, but in 40 years they might end up being wrong. Like, who's so spry at these ages? And it's like, oh, no, there's lots of people who are in their 80s, or even going into their 90s that are exceptionally spry. I mean, Shatner was doing a fucking motorcycle road trip around the country when he was in his 80s, for fuck's sake. Anyway, continue.
Right. So, Like I said, this book goes into the major aging pathways. Like, I think everybody's heard about telomeres when it comes to aging. That's something that Dr. Greger covers. He also talks about, like, sirtuins, antioxidants, DNA damage and repair, all sorts of things that contribute to, your body's decay, decomposition, and what we can do to help repair it. Like, one of the most fascinating things I've learned so far in this book is that you can actually make your telomeres grow longer by eating certain foods. Which is completely counter to what I have learned so far in my life.
Right.
Like, I've taken a lot of, biochemistry, biology courses in college, and most of them, whenever they talked about telomeres, you hear the same thing over and over again. Like, when DNA replicates, telomeres shorten a little bit.
Correct.
Until eventually they completely disintegrate and your DNA splits apart.
Right.
Which causes apoptosis, which is cell death. And that's just not true.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually grow the length of your telomeres. Or even slow, the rate at which they decay over time. To the point where, like, somebody who is very healthy in their 80s might have the same genetic age as somebody who's not quite as healthy that's in their 60s.
Right. Now, let me put this in a little bit, because you're saying this can be done through diet. So, Dr. Greger is really big on being plant-based.
Whole food, plant-based diets. That is the specific terminology. Because it's not just about being a vegan or a vegetarian.
Right.
Vegans and vegetarians still eat plenty of junk food.
Yeah.
What he is saying is increase... so this is like the least controversial bit of nutrition advice that anybody can get. All doctors, all health advisors across the board agree that any increase in fruits and vegetable intake in your diet is a good thing. Mm-hmm. So what Dr. Greger advocates is, well, why not just eat all whole, plant foods?
Right.
Like, make that your entire diet, or at least over 90%.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, a couple points I want to bring up. Of course, there are doctors, quote-unquote, who would subscribe to the carnivore diet that might not agree, but I get your point, that most, would say, no, like adding in fruits and vegetables, a very good thing. But the other point I want to bring in is one of the things that initially impressed me about Dr. Greger's work was right from the first book I ever read by him, which was How Not to Die, which you introduced me to. He's big on the 80-20 rule. Like, he understands, okay, maybe you're not going to, be on this whole foods plant-based diet, 100% of the time. You might have moments of weakness or something else, whatever. Or he would even in How Not to Die, he'd say, well, you might still eat meat. But even so, like 80% of the time, just shift to this and it's going to change things significantly for you.
Yeah, he says it over and over again. Any increase is a good thing. Any increase in whole plant foods is a good thing. Right.
So my point is, this guy isn't like here to, I feel that he's very, he's not very hardline. He is hardline in the sense that he has tons of research that he's constantly quoting or that his organizations are part of.
He only talks about evidence-based nutrition.
Exactly. Okay. And it's not like, oh, just this one study. It's like, he'll toss out 2 or 3.
And meta-analysis of studies, which take hundreds of studies or tens of studies and put them together into one large analysis.
Yeah, exactly. So, I just, I want to put it out there just how, I'm not even sure what the term I'm looking for, but just
he's so well researched.
Yeah, and he's not like that hardline, Like, I think if you're a meat eater, you can still read his book and get tons out of it. Get so much information out of it. I'm sure maybe, yes, he would love it if everybody was more plant-based, was plant-based as far as diets go. But regardless, he meets you where you're at. And I really, really dig that about his work. Please continue with talking about this.
He is respectful of people who, still eat meat and still eat junk food. Mm-hmm. He just tries to present the evidence as he sees it. And of course he has a whole team of researchers that work alongside of him.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting to hear some of the things that he turns up. You know, like, I'm not just learning about how not to age in this book. I'm also learning, like, there's a difference in quality of studies depending on how they perform the studies.
Right.
And what sort of evidence they get based off of those. You know, like, do they have a control group? Was it a long-term study?
Yeah.
Was it double-blind randomized trials?
Yeah.
These are all very important because it affects the quality of the information that comes out of the study.
Yeah, just quick, something else that I want to actually like inject about him is he's not coming from, oh, I feel so bad about the animals, you know, which is a totally fine thing to feel. Like, I'm there, I don't want to kill animals. I don't want to
feel
do
that, yeah.
Yeah, right. No, I'm just saying that he's not coming at this from a moralist argument. You know, like that's not his style. And the reason I can say that confidently is because in the book I mentioned previously, How to Survive a Pandemic, he argues for killing every chicken, like, alive right now, or
every chicken that's in a factory farm.
Yes, killing them right now, and
all
then,
of them,
right, and then never factory farming them again. And he argues for this because this is one of the lead, spreaders of whatever pandemic, of disease. What do you got?
Yeah, right. I mean, viruses basically breed in these factory farms.
Exactly.
And they can randomize very quickly because the chickens are so closely packed together.
Right.
You know, infections just sweep through these populations.
Right.
Millions of Americans come down with bladder infections, urinary tract infections every year, including more than 1 million children. Most cases stay in the bladder, but when the bacteria creep up into the kidneys or get into the bloodstream, things can get serious. Thankfully, we have antibiotics. But there's now a pandemic of a new multi-drug-resistant strain of E. coli, discovered just in 2008, and now this so-called ST-131 strain went from unknown to a leading cause of bladder infections the world over, resistant to even some of our second- and third-line antibiotics. And it's been found in chicken, retail chicken breasts sampled from across the country, documenting a persisting reservoir of extensively antimicrobial-resistant X-spec bacteria, the extraintestinal pathogenic E. coli, including the ST-131 strain, in retail chicken products in the United States, suggesting a potential public health threat. See, urinary tract infections may be food-borne, by which they mean predominantly poultry, chicken and turkey, so maybe we shouldn't be feeding antibiotics to these animals by the ton in poultry production. But wait, food-borne bladder infections? What are you doing with that drumstick? No, eating contaminated chicken can lead to the colonization of the rectum with these bacteria that can then, even months later, crawl up into the bladder to cause an infection. The problem of increasing antimicrobial resistance is so dire that some experts are predicting that the era of antibiotics may be coming to an end, ushering in a post-antibiotic era in which common infections and minor injuries can once again kill. More than 80% of E. coli isolated from beef, pork, and poultry exhibited resistance to at least one antibiotic, and more than half from poultry were resistant to 5 different drugs. One of the ways this happens is that viruses, called bacteriophages, can transfer antibiotic-resistant genes between bacteria. About a quarter of these viruses isolated from chicken meat were found able to transduce antibiotic drug resistance into E. coli. And one of the big problems with this is that disinfectants used to kill bacteria are in many cases not able to eliminate these viruses. Some of these viruses are even resistant to bleach at the kinds of concentrations used in the food industry. And likewise alcohol, which is what you find in many hand sanitizers, also unable to harm most of them. The irony is that the industry has tried to intentionally feed these viruses to chickens. Why would they do that? It can boost egg production in hens and increase body weight gain in broiler chickens to get them to slaughter weight faster. The only thing that seems to dissuade the industry is, if anything, affects the taste of the meat. That's why the industry had to stop spraying chickens with benzene to try to kill off all the parasites. The meat ended up with a distasteful flavor, described as strong, acidic, musty, medicinal, biting, objectionable, and tasty. But what if you buy organic chicken? For another type of bacteria, Enterococcus, antibiotic-resistant bugs were found in both conventional and organically raised chicken, but were less common in organic. Only about 1 in 3 contaminated with drug-resistant bugs, compared to nearly 1 in 2. But in a study of hundreds of prepackaged retail chicken breasts tested from 99 grocery stores, being labeled organic or antibiotic-free did not seem to impact the contamination levels of antibiotic-resistant E. coli from fresh retail chicken, though purchasing meat from natural food stores appeared to be safer regardless of how it was labeled. Kosher chicken appeared to be the worst, nearly twice the level of antibiotic-resistant E. coli contamination compared to conventional, which goes against the whole concept of kosher. No difference in drug resistance between the E. coli swab from conventional chicken versus organic and raised without antibiotics chicken, but either way, kosher was worse. But how could organic and raised without antibiotics chicken not be better? Well, it could be cross-contamination at the slaughter plant, so bugs just jumped from one to the other. Or it could be the organic chicken loophole. USDA organic standards prohibits the use of antibiotics in poultry starting on day 2 of the animal's life. This is an important loophole, since even antibiotics considered critical for human health are routinely injected into one-day-old chicks and eggs, which has been directly associated with antibiotic-resistant foodborne infections. And there was no difference in the presence of Exbec bacteria between organic and conventional, the bacteria implicated in urinary tract infections. These findings suggest that retail chicken products in the United States, even if they're labeled organic, pose a potential health threat to consumers because they're contaminated with extensively antibiotic-resistant E. coli. And even if we were able to get the poultry industry to stop using antibiotics, the contamination of chicken meat with Exbec bacteria could still remain a threat.
Yeah, so I'm just making it clear, like, this guy is not some hippy-dippy, like, he's just, he doesn't want to turn cows into baseball gloves and all this stuff. No, that's not where he's coming from. He's incredibly pragmatic, in my opinion. And again, I don't have a problem with the moralist arguments either, but I know a lot of people do, is that they think it's just a bunch of sissies or something that are like vegetarians or whatever. Oh, no, this guy wants to wipe out millions of chickens overnight. And
all right, but he's not heartless.
No, he's not heartless, but I mean, I can respect that. And I actually kind of, like, I've come out on the show and talked about that. I'm like, yeah, I'm not into killing anything, but I'm all for the chicken holocaust. Like, I'm there. Like, I get it. Maybe poor use of terms, but I'm Jewish. It's fine. So, so is he, actually. But anyway, I'm just saying that, like, this is a guy coming from, like you said, evidence-backed. And he's not messing around, and I love it.
No.
He hits hard, pulls no punches. I love it. But okay, so what would you say? I mean, you've laid out some dynamite stuff. Like, actually, one of the best things I'd heard that you mentioned, it was a real eye-opener for you as well. And when you were telling me about it over breakfast, it blew my mind when you brought it up. How the standard American diet, right, argues for consuming dairy, right?
Right. Oh, yes. So
you want to finish?
The food pyramid that the USDA uses to recommend servings of various fruits, vegetables, whatever food group it happens to be. Mm-hmm. This food pyramid, one of the levels of the pyramid is dairy.
Yeah.
And they recommend, milk, cheese, eggs, yogurt, however many servings. I wish I had looked this up before you brought it up. I don't remember how many servings they recommend. But anyway.
People get it, yeah.
That is actually racist.
Yeah.
And this is legitimately racist because the majority of the world, whether it's Native Americans, Japanese, Jewish people, Chinese, go down the list. Everybody in the world, there's like 0 to 30% of adults who can actually stomach lactose. It's only white Europeans, 30 to 60% of them can stomach lactose as adults
Right.
without lactose intolerance.
Right. But most other lineages are lactose intolerant.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
As adults. And it makes sense, because we're not meant to drink the milk of our mothers throughout our entire lifespan.
Right. So basically the only ancestry that has a significant amount of lactose tolerant, that can consume lactose on the planet, are white people.
Yeah.
And so his point is, this is basically institutional racism. And he's not wrong. Like, I mean, and I bring this up partly to say, like, he's not heartless. Clearly he has a heart. Okay. But it's such an amazing, you don't even realize it, you know, until like someone just says it like that. And it stunned me as well. And I'm like, yeah, holy shit. Because same thing, you know, like 99% of Ashkenazi Jews are lactose intolerant. You know,
right.
I mean, they just are now, again, and this speaks to, and it's always so funny because, oh, well, Ashkenazi Jews are just white European Jews. No, motherfucker, they're Middle Eastern. Okay. and if you need the proof, part of it is, you know, you can smell them from a mile away if they're having dairy. And so, okay, they're not white people. Stop that. But regardless, that's not even important because everybody's an individual, in my opinion, and so blah, blah, blah. Okay. And there's no such thing as species or race. But, okay, regardless.
But there is lineage.
but there is ancestry, okay, and that's a thing, and I get it, okay? And I'm not like a biological denier of some kind. But the point being that, I mean, this is something that, I'm reminded, my hero, Harlan Ellison, and I've quoted him many times on this in the past, where he, so beautifully stated that, most people don't even notice, they don't even, like racism's so embedded in our culture, in our society, they don't even notice that it's there. Like they just don't know. And something as simple as dairy being a recommended part of your diet, yeah, that's fucking racist, right? But you don't know. And like, does that make you a racist? No, but it just shows you that, again, the doctors don't give a fucking shit, about anybody beyond, perhaps the average white American.
Yeah, and what's funny, too, is that most doctors don't even get nutrition education when they're in college.
That always drives me nuts. Another credit for Dr. Greger that I'll give.
That he calls out doctors on that?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, like, you see, I've seen so many dietitians, and sometimes, and I say this, everybody's got their challenges, okay? But, like, if you're a fucking nutritionist or a dietitian, I expect you to fit through the door, okay? And
you expect to look like you're in peak health and physical fitness.
Yes, because what you're telling me to do, I expect to see working in your life. Okay, and I mean, it's like the little boy sitting in front of the doctor in the 50s, and the little boy starts coughing, and the doctor's there just smoking right in front of him, and the doctor says, "Boy, I don't like the sound of that cough." Well, no shit, you're smoking in front of me, motherfucker. But you know what I mean? Like this is the inconsistency, the contradiction that exists in the medical industry. One of the credits to Dr. Greger, this guy's like in his 50s. Holy fuck, I think he could outrun me.
He is so spry. He is so full of energy. You can hear it. He narrates all of his books. He does all of these videos for nutritionfacts.org.
Yes.
And he's just jumping in the air as he's talking about these exciting nutrition topics.
No, he's
and he turned 50 while he was writing this book.
Right. I mean, it's phenomenal. So, that's one of the things I always look for. I mean, conversely, again, so that people don't think I'm picking on obese people or something. I prefer my chef to not fit through the door. I prefer a chef to, like, clearly they know what good food is. They have the experience, and I want to see it on the waistline.
I am your chef most of the time.
Well, actually, I just say that, and that's kind of contradicting, right? Because I don't want my dietitian to be, but I want my chef to be, and it's like, wait, all right, anyway.
It depends on what you're going. If you're going for, like, soul food, I hear that.
Yeah, right. If I'm going out to eat, it depends. Are we at home, or are we going out to eat?
Are we going out to have a good time and eat something that's, like, tasty and unhealthy?
Right.
Just hits right in the heart.
Yeah, but honestly, it doesn't have...
coronary arteries.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be that way either. Like, everybody can be eating healthy, like, in how not to age, and that can even be at the restaurant, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, so being kind of funny in a lot of this, but this is the real deal. Now, what's the best tip you've heard from this book?
Oh, well, it depends on who you are. So, like, for the majority of people who are just getting into health and nutrition and want to find, you know, a source of high quality information, keep in mind, so this is something Dr. Greger points out a lot. A lot of these health food studies are industry funded, which means that there's an industry that is paying for these research experiments to be done.
Right.
So, like, the dairy industry funding research that shows that dairy is beneficial in whatever way.
Right.
There's even fucking studies out there that show that Coke and Pepsi products are beneficial. But it's like, you know, what are you comparing it to that makes it beneficial? But the point is, once these industry-funded studies get published, then the industries can claim, oh, our food is healthy because look at this study. So there's a lot of information that is misleading out in the world. And that is why it's so confusing to figure out, like, what is the ideal diet for me? Because there's just companies that will take advantage of people's ignorance for profit, period. That's all they want. It's not like there's a lot of studies out there. He makes this joke a lot by Big Broccoli. You know, Big Broccoli Industries not funding studies about how amazing broccoli is, but they should be, because cruciferous vegetables are like some of the most healthy foods on the planet.
Right. Because
they contain high amounts of sulforaphane, which is like a miracle molecule. But I'll let you look into that on your own.
Yeah. Well, I mean, another one that I thought was interesting is apparently he calls bullshit on resveratrol. I was shocked by that. You want to tell me more about that?
So that's another fascinating one. Resveratrol is an antioxidant mostly found in purple grapes, but people know it mostly from red wine.
Right.
And one of the things that Dr. Greger talks about in this book is how alcohol is something that leads to more aging. And that's because when you drink alcohol, it's broken down in your body into acetic acid, which is vinegar. Everybody's familiar with that. But there's an intermediate step where it's acetaldehyde, which is actually carcinogenic. Meaning it causes cancer in people. Yeah. So there's a small amount of carcinogens that are produced in your body every time you drink alcohol. Now, that's true for any alcohol you drink. Red wine contains resveratrol, which can help mitigate some of those negative effects because it has that antioxidant property. But it doesn't mean that resveratrol is the only antioxidant in red wine. There's actually, hundreds of different compounds in red wine or grapes that that synergistically act together in your body to produce whatever effects they do. So when you just isolate one molecule like resveratrol from grapes or from red wine, it doesn't always have the same effect as it would in concert with all of those other molecules.
Right.
And what Dr. Greger is talking about is that there are a lot of studies coming out recently showing that resveratrol by itself it isn't the anti-aging molecule that everybody thought it was. Like, it's not a super antioxidant. It's just so dumb because I had this professor in college.
Oh, yeah. Here it goes.
He was such a jerk, but he made this company that sold coffee with resveratrol mixed in.
Right.
And it was supposedly like the superfood, which, like, coffee in itself, yeah, it's great for your liver.
Sure.
It's actually kind of a healthy drink.
Sure.
But he added resveratrol just because he thought it would, like, make it more of a superfood and, like, health nuts would flock to buying this.
Yeah. I mean, you're basically copying Dave Asprey's, playbook, but he just added casein, or, he added butter. But anyway, continue.
Yeah. it's funny to think about because the way Dr. Greger described it, like all of the health benefits from resveratrol that people thought it had over the last 10 years, now we're finding out that was all kind of just a mirage.
Yeah. I mean, and this is funny for me because I don't want to get too sidetracked on it, but it might actually lead into our next story. But I started supplementing resveratrol. I won't be anymore. Partly because of the research that you shared with me.
Well, you should know better because I tell you all the time to get your nutrition from whole food, plant-based
I know,
products.
I know. So, but here's the thing. Like, so for me, okay, let's remind me to bring this back into resveratrol, okay, because it's important. So here's the thing. You put me in the gym, okay, and I know exactly what I'm doing. And, like I know the time-tested techniques. I know all the jazz. Like, get me in there. That's home. I don't want to say I'm a master there. I'm not a Mr. Olympia or something. But, like, very few people could tell me, okay, no, this is what you should do in the gym and, like, make a good argument for what I'm doing is wrong. Just too much experience with all this stuff. Okay. However, with diet... and then that doesn't include supplementation. With diet, and a lot of these other things, like this is where I wholly rely upon you. Like, and this is what I love. Like the fact that I'll read this book too. But like, I know you're on it and you're going to make the changes in our diet, in our life that need to be made. You're going to tell me and I just do it, whatever it is. I'm like, okay, fine. And we move on. We go forward. What do you got?
Wait, is this why you don't listen to me about supplementation? Because you can't separate supplements from diet.
I agree with you.
They are part of the same package.
No, I agree with you. That's not the point I'm getting at. I'm just saying what I'm getting at is like this is an area, and the irony is, diet builds the muscle more so than getting in the gym does, right?
Well, diet builds everything.
Yes.
It builds all of your tissues.
Right.
Not just muscle.
No, right. Exactly. Okay. But like diet is so much more important than you need to have exercise as well. But diet is, as many say, that's 80% of it, of the muscle. 20% is exercise. Okay. So what I'm getting at here is, like I research heavily into more of the bodybuilding side of things, the weightlifting side of things and all this. Now, that usually comes with that industry is funded, in fact, honestly, largely by, like, supplementation, among other things. Okay, so the things that I normally read, I like to take in information that comes at a slow pace. Okay, for example, like reading a book is way better than reading 20 million websites or internet stories in a year. Like one book is going to blow away what you could read in your entirety in a year, even if you're doing like a story a day or something. Okay. I normally would read magazines, muscle magazines, like Muscular Development and some others. Okay. Unfortunately, Muscular Development went out of business in November of 2023. It fucking sucks. Okay. But they're the ones... And because I feel like they did the great work. They did the slow work. They pulled the studies. They give you the study numbers so you can go reference them and look at them yourself and everything. They did such great work. They're the ones that got me onto resveratrol. Okay, so kind of bringing it back. And the point ultimately that I'm getting at, in my opinion, like you want the information, especially information like this. How not to age or how not to die, which that's kind of saying the same thing, right? The titles of his books. But, I had said when this book came out, I was like, honestly, all he has to do is just have updated information from, when did How Not to Die come out? How long ago was that? 5, 6, 7 years?
That was at least 7 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. Even if he just updated the information for, okay, it's 7 years later, it could be How Not to Die 2 or revised edition or something like that. And I would have been all over it, and I know you would have been too. But I was basically saying, like, no, that's really all he needs to do. He's doing a lot more, obviously, based upon what you've talked about. Okay. But this is the thing, is you have to, you can't just have one study that you base the information off. I don't even think you can just have two. You really got to have more than that.
And he has 13,000 in this book.
Exactly. And I know he had to cut the book down, right? He talks about that like originally the book was 500 pages or something? Or no, it was thousands of pages.
Yeah, it was more like 2,000
Yes.
pages.
Yeah,
And
it
he
was
cut it down
thousands.
to 500
Right.
for the publisher.
Right.
Which I think is bullshit. He should have pushed back on that.
Yeah.
Give us the full version.
Right. Right. No, totally. Yeah. So here's the thing is, if you go for your diet and supplementation of advice and all this jazz, if you go for that on the internet, look, these websites have to push shit out 5, 10, 20 times a day, sometimes even more than that, if they're lucky enough to have a writing team. They're going to take every little fucking study, nitpick it to hell, and come out with some kind of clickbaity headline for you to read, okay? But then inside of 5 minutes, that study could be debunked by another study. Like, you cannot take in health information, particularly. Really, I think this is true for all information. But you can't take in health information at that speed, at the speed at which the internet and media outlets present it. It doesn't make sense. I would even argue also that as much as I love monthly muscle mags, which barely exist anymore now, especially, even that could be too fast. It's something that has to be done over a long period of time. And, that's where a book like this comes in and, in my opinion, wins. Because it doesn't just tell you the new information, it compares. And so, that's a really potent package, to have. And, again, you could say, well, a study will come out tomorrow that'll say that it's all wrong. Yeah, but it's not just about a study suddenly coming out and saying X, Y, Z. Okay, it's over time and in comparison to other studies that are happening in conjunction, you have to compare all of those. And that really, in my opinion, that can only happen in a book. Because I think a lot of people will be like, well, why read a health book today? I can just go to healthline.com or something like that. No, the way that, information of this nature does not get presented well on the internet overall, in my opinion. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you really need to do a lot of comparisons because it's all in comparison,
Yeah.
Like, even just saying the word health food, like, okay, it's healthy in comparison to what?
Yeah.
And that can just be broken down in so many different ways.
Yeah.
But I think Dr. Greger does an excellent job. And if I could just say, why I think this book is so important for people to listen to, and why it's important for people to make these positive changes toward whole food, plant-based diets. Because there is evidence now showing that, in regards to the nurture-nature argument of what determines how you feel on a daily basis, like how healthful you are, whether or not you're healthy in the long term, whether you get cancer or have diabetes or heart disease, all of these top killers of people in the U.S. today. That actually breaks down not to 50-50% of nature-nurture. It's actually more like 70% of the results of the way you are as an adult have to do with your lifestyle and diet choices, not genetics. Genetics plays a small role, like 30%, so that's still something, but over 70%, you get to choose based on what you do.
Yeah, right.
Who you are and how healthy you are.
Yeah.
And I think that is so important for people to understand. Your life is literally in your hands. Your long-term health is in your hands. How you feel on a day-to-day basis. It's what you do and what you eat.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. I completely agree. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, again, I haven't dived into the book yet. I explained why I haven't yet. I let you get right in, I mean, you have an insanely busy schedule, but, I know that, like, particularly Dr. Greger is like the Devin Townsend of health for you. And
yes, I only have a couple people that I follow after religiously.
Yeah, right.
But Dr. Greger is one of those people just because, like, he delivers the information that I've wanted my entire life.
Yeah.
Of, like, just super high quality. And I guess there's some other things associated with that. Obviously, I'm biased because I was already a vegetarian when I found him. But evidence-based nutrition, that's, I'm all about evidence.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, he takes no profits from, as I understand it, I think it's probably still true for this book, but he takes no profits from book sales. So, yeah. There's a lot of people who, I'm surprised, speaking of like some, shall we say, some bodybuilding or weightlifting or fitness podcasts, they never seem to take him on. Like they never, I'm always waiting for them to like, to go after him and debunk him, because some of these podcasts, I can't stand them, because they'll do exactly what I was just talking about, that, most media outlets online, or websites will do, where like, oh, well, now we have this study that says this. And it's like, yeah, but you're only bringing out one study, man. Like,
right.
Let's have some comparison.
Aren't there other studies that looked at the same things?
Right. And, I mean, like, as far as supplements go, one of the ones that, like, I never even flinch at recommending is creatine. But that's because there are so many fucking studies about creatine. Like, it's crazy how much it's researched. And it's positive across the board. I mean, based upon intake, but it's positive across the board. And that's, I just hope people learn to get into that mindset. Because that's almost like your we're talking about like your diet. This is like your mental diet. You don't eat fast food. Well, don't eat fast. Don't consume fast facts either. Or if I were to call it that, fast information. How about that? So, anything else you want to get out about How Not to Age?
Yeah, just one other thing. I don't want to give the whole book away, but I do want to say I felt really good hearing this little bit of information, because it kind of confirms that what we're doing is a good thing, and what we're practicing is intermittent fasting. It's a specific type of intermittent fasting. It's where we eat breakfast and lunch and we don't eat dinner.
Right.
So we just have a very short eating window that's like 8 hours or
Correct.
less. And one thing that leads to is, like, well, first of all, we only have 2 meals, so we have to make them count. Nutritionally speaking, we have to get in everything that we need as far as vitamins, minerals, nutrients into those 2 meals. And the other thing is, like, that means we're not snacking late at night. We're not having a big meal and dessert at the end of the day. So in a way, we're kind of calorie restricting. One of the things that Dr. Greger talks about in How Not to Age is that, like, minor calorie restriction, and we're talking like 200 calories a day or something, so like 1,800 calories consumed in a 24-hour period instead of 2,000, something like that. That can lead to longer lifespans. Sure.
A lot of research on this.
Yeah.
I've had friends who work in life extension, and I mean, like the research around calorie restriction, and I mean, there's a downside to that, because you can take that to an extreme where you have zero strength.
Well,
comparatively,
that's not healthy either. If you're so hungry that you have obsessive food thoughts.
Yeah, well, sure, right. But I mean, yes, there absolutely is something to calorie restriction.
Yeah, like I said, just a 200 calorie restriction per 24-hour period. So that's like, don't eat that cupcake.
Yeah, right. Right.
Your life could be longer because of it.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and always the trick with calorie restriction is always to, at the very least at first, until you get used to it, you have to occupy the mind. Like, you have to trick it, into not feeling like, say, the hunger pang, or into finding something more enjoyable than the cupcake. Honestly, for me, and I don't mean for me personally, I mean that I've always recommended this is one of the great things about video games, because video games just activate so much of your consciousness, that I think they can, like, if you're feeling hungry, pop in a video game, because it's different. Like with movies and TV shows, it doesn't work. You want to eat while you're, watching a movie or watching a TV show.
But something that's more interactive,
Yes.
it does consume all of your attention.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so easy to lose track of time doing that.
Yeah, with the video game, totally. I mean, you get literally lost in a whole other world.
Oh, God.
And, not only that, like, you can even, say you're playing, like, Tears of the Kingdom or something. Like, you can cook in the fucking game and watch watch Link eat. And, honestly, like...
It's like a mukbang.
Yeah.
I mean, not the same, but...
Right. But
similar idea.
But I think it can help stave off, like, okay, well, I'm doing it here, but it's different. But that's always, the video games are just so amazing because they are a wonderful distraction. And I say wonderful, not bad. Anybody can take things to extremes and be bad, but like they're wonderful. Okay, so anything else you want to get out there?
I would highly recommend listening to this book or reading it for anybody who hasn't. And if you are unfamiliar with Dr. Greger, check out his website, nutritionfacts.org. Yeah,
totally. And listening to him is a lot of fun. He's funny. Like his writing.
He is so funny.
Yeah, his writing style is great, but his speaking style melds with it, and it's very funny.
He makes up his own sayings too. Like,
yes.
It doesn't matter how shred if you're dead.
Yeah. Or the famous, until they put it to the test.
Oh man, he brings that in so many times, and he always says it the same way.
Yes.
Put it to the test.
Yeah, he's good. So, all right. I great stuff to get out there. Again, I never really hear anyone else talking about his books, so will I take 30 minutes to talk about them in my podcast? Abso-fucking-lutely.
Yeah, because we're so passionate about health and longevity.
Yeah, totally. I'm all about immortality. Like, really. I am.
And being the best human being that you can be.
Yes.
Like, fulfilling your potential.
Yes. You can look around in the studio here, and I'm like, wait, like, is there an example of what I want to look like, or someone? Oh, wait a minute, what's that over there? Oh, is that Jay Cutler? Jeez.
Well, as Mr. Olympia.
As Mr. Olympia, looking like a Greek, gets signed by Jay Cutler. Actually, at some point I'll have to share that picture on Instagram that you were very gracious to take when he and I got together when I got to meet him. So anyway, yeah. Like, that's there because, like, I don't expect to achieve that, but that's the goal. Like, that's or I shouldn't say that's not the goal, that's the journey, right?
That's the direction you want to head.
That's the direction, yes. So, I'm very much into that. Very, very much into health, obviously. But that immortality thing, that's legit. We might get into that a little bit more. So, something I want to talk about next, and this kind of plays off of what we were getting to more at the end there. And we had teased this when we were talking about Henry David Thoreau in the last episode, as well as Ralph Waldo Emerson and all that. And how this kind of came about is these are guys, especially Ralph Waldo Emerson, who were leaders of what would be known as the New Thought movement. Okay, it was all around the world, but it was certainly white hot in the United States in the late 19th century, early 20th century.
Today I want to address a question that we get often about what is New Thought. We're a part of New Thought, and you hear New Thought being bantered about in our world. And so New Thought is the phrase that is used to describe an umbrella. I call it an umbrella that hangs over a number of spiritual traditions that exist in the world today. One of the things that William James told us is that New Thought is the unique contribution that the United States of America has made to the formation of religion in our world. And so New Thought is the umbrella phrase for unity the wonderful teaching called Unity, for our teaching, which is called Science of Mind and Spirit, for divine science, and even some feel that Christian Science kind of can fit under the phrase of New Thought. But it's all about New Thought, ancient traditions. That's something that one of my colleagues, Dr. Michael Beckwith, talks about. Because what we teach isn't really new, it's ancient, and the concepts are woven through many traditions from many different parts of our world. It's just that New Thought is an invitation to have a new idea, to consider a new idea about the way the universe works, about our own individual cosmology. And we teach people how to think new thoughts, because it's so easy to get caught up in our stories and in our traditions and in what people told us was true about everything from how we live our lives to religion and the nature of the universe. And so New Thought is a great phrase because it invites us to have a new thought. And New Thought is spiritual study, spiritual practice, spiritual contemplation, spiritual awareness that invites us into a deeper, new idea, new thought about ourselves and our world. And so we sometimes are afraid of our new thoughts, but our new thoughts are good. I know my new thoughts lead me into really amazing experiences.
And this would kind of come back 100 years later or so, in the form of The Secret by Rhonda Byrne, which was I don't think you can understate just how big of a deal that documentary was. Like, it was, she made millions, if not billions, off of it, has had multiple books come out about it. There's even like movies that are branded, that have been made, branded with The Secret as its, branding, fictional movies, and with budgets and like real actors and everything. It's a big deal. I feel like it's one of those things. Ideas, they always talk about how fashion runs on like a 30-year cycle. Like in the 90s, the 60s, fashion was making a comeback. People wearing bell bottoms and circular sunglasses all over again.
And today, people are dressing like it's the 90s. At least they're trying to.
Yes. Yeah, totally. So there's this idea of there's like a 30-year or maybe a 20-year cycle, something like that, with a lot of these kinds of things. And it seems like right now, manifesting, which is really part and parcel of the law of attraction, which is what The Secret was all about, has become the thing on the internet. Now, I have a couple stories about it. We don't necessarily have to dive into those. But we can. But I want to talk about it a little bit. I want to get, because this is really becoming a big fucking thing. In the most innocuous places, I hear people start talking about, manifesting.
Same.
Yeah.
Like in YouTube videos that have nothing to do with manifesting.
Right. And it just like comes up and, it manifested that and did that. And, and I'm really bothered by this. That this is like becoming such a popular thing because I feel like it is so wildly misunderstood. I probably am going to pull up a story here just so we have something to contrast against. But a little bit of history on this. Again, this idea really comes out of the New Thought movement, which had varying leaders like Wallace D. Wattles, Charles Hannell, who's actually one that I am a fan of. Napoleon Hill would be a very famous one. Think and Grow Rich. A lot of this, and it all comes down to this idea. In fact, let me pull up the story here. This one in particular is from Vox, even though I have another one that is a very long but fascinating read from Aeon, titled Of Memes and Magic, basically talking about how Silicon Valley is pulling all from Aleister Crowley's playbook, and that Silicon Valley is now openly becoming messianic, though they think they're the messiahs, and openly like saying, our goal is to become gods, which, I'm not saying I necessarily disagree with the abstractness maybe of what they're talking about, but the idea that you're going to achieve this through technology, whole other ballgame. Anyway, this story is Shut Up, I'm Manifesting. The byline is the latest internet wellness craze is thinking your way to a better life. Whether it works or not really isn't the point. So anyway, it gives a little preamble about The Secret, of course. Let me actually, before I read what they define manifesting as, did you ever watch The Secret? Did you ever buy into this law of attraction stuff, Ellen? And there's no wrong answer.
No, not at all.
Okay.
I heard about it.
Did you ever watch it?
No, I never watched.
Okay, continue.
I never watched it.
Yeah.
No, I never believed in manifesting. I just believed in hard work.
Yeah. Okay.
But, there's a caveat to that, and I don't know if we have to get into that now, but, through a lot of my hard work, I didn't realize that I was, in a sense, manifesting.
Ooh, do you want to tell me more what you mean by that? Or do you want to save it?
Let's save it. Let's save it.
Okay. All right. We'll try to put a pin on that. So here we go. I'm reading from this piece from Vox. Quote unquote, manifesting, or the practice of thinking aspirational thoughts with the purpose of making them real, has never been more popular. From late March to mid-July, Google searches for the term have skyrocketed 669%. Shut Up, I'm Manifesting is among the defining memes of, in this case, 2020, yet even pre-pandemic interest had been gradually rising since around 2017, alongside burgeoning conversations around wellness and self-care. At the same time, as stereotypically woo-woo practices involving crystals, essential oils, tarot, and energy wavelengths were reaching the general consciousness, professionals and influencers touting these methods were making bank. One of them even made it to the presidential primary debate stage, and I'm not sure who that is. Marianne Williamson, I guess. Okay, wouldn't have any idea because fuck politics, we're anarchists here.
Yeah.
Reading on, in a moment where all any average citizen can really do ultimately is hope for a better future than the one we're currently living in, it's no wonder the practice of manifesting has exploded. Like so many other trends after the quarantine, homemaking, bread baking, tie-dyeing, or learning TikTok dances, manifesting feels like a way to accomplish something we have control over in a time we're mostly powerless to affect any real change. There is also a lower barrier to entry than almost any other activity. All you need are your dreams and to think about how nice it would be if they all came true. So I want to read the next part, which is what is manifesting and why do people do it? Do you have any thoughts on what I've read so far, though, Ellen?
No, please continue.
Okay. The act of manifesting either has a ton of complicated rules or is whatever you want it to be, depending upon who you ask. Our one popular TikTok claims that by simply coming across it, you've already manifested the video, and that, in fact, you've unconsciously manifested everything that has ever happened in your life. She quickly clarified in the comments that, quote, nobody manifests their trauma, end quote.
What?
So, yeah.
That's confusing.
Yeah, well, this is where, I mean, this is the thing, and a point we'll get to. If you just poke at manifesting, the house of cards fall. Any, and it's not even logic. Even just think about, even just come at from an emotional aspect, and it completely falls apart.
Yeah, it sounds like there's not even a singular definition. There's lots of different definitions.
Right. And this TikToker, I don't know what the fuck you call those people, but this person on TikTok had to come out super clear and say, but nobody manifests their trauma, because this is manifesting can often, in the law of attraction in general, really comes off as victim blaming.
Yeah, it does kind of sound like that.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think that there's something wrong with that. I mean, if you believe in, last time we were on the show, we were talking about reincarnation and how kind of hand in hand with that idea is you getting to choose your situation in life before you're even born and what sort of challenges you face along the way. They call it challenges, opportunities to learn, not necessarily traumas. So it's just a different way to view it, but it's essentially saying the same thing. Yeah, you chose this situation because you wanted to learn from it.
Yeah. So, I mean, we could get into, there could be a separate conversation around, does trauma actually exist, right? Like if you go into Adlerian psychology, no, it does not.
Right. And we've discussed that, I think it was a few years back, actually.
Yeah.
We talked about that.
Which is fascinating stuff to research. Like the work of, was it Charles Adler? Did I get that right? Anyway, one of the students of Freud, who went in a completely different direction than him or Jung, but Adlerian psychology is totally worth researching.
Let me tell you a story about two people. As a child, John had a physical defect. It was a unique characteristic that made him stand out from his peers. Despite his efforts to fit in and be accepted, the other children targeted him for being different. They mocked and taunted him, making him feel like an outcast. The bullying John experienced at school took a toll on his self-esteem and confidence. He began to question his worth and struggled with feelings of loneliness. Feeling trapped and unable to escape the cycle of abuse, John withdrew from social interactions. He found solace in the digital world, where he could escape from the pain and rejection he faced in the real life. Video games became his refuge, providing a temporary escape from his harsh reality. With time, John's isolation grew deeper. He disconnected from society, losing faith in the possibility of meaningful relationships. Social media, although superficial connection, became his only form of interaction. He found himself mindlessly scrolling through endless feeds, comparing his life to others and feeling even more isolated. The weight of his emotional pain led John down a dark path. He started experiencing frequent thoughts of suicide, as this seemed like the only escape from his overwhelming despair. Each day became a struggle, and hope seemed distant and unattainable. This extended period of isolation and despair took a significant toll on John's mental health, shaping his outlook on life as he reached adult life. He became resigned to his circumstances, convinced that he was destined to be alone and rejected by others. Now, let's turn to Susan. Despite facing similar challenges to John, Susan's story took a different turn. Like John, Susan had a physical defect that distinguished her from her peers. Throughout her school years, Susan endured relentless bullying and found solace in her own company. She would spend most of her time alone, seeking refuge in books and creative pursuits. The isolation was difficult for her, but she held on to a glimmer of hope that someday things would change. As Susan grew older, her resilience and determination began to shine through. She focused on meeting new people through mutual interest. Throughout her involvement in artistic endeavors, she found a close-knit group of friends who appreciated her for who she was, including her unique physical appearance. These newfound friends offered Susan a sense of belonging and acceptance that she had longed for. They saw beyond her physical appearance and embraced her for her genuine character and talents. With time, Susan's social circle expanded and she built strong, meaningful relationships that enriched her life. Additionally, Susan's journey also led her to find love. She entered into a happy romantic relationship with someone who appreciated her for her inner beauty and shared her interests. Their partnership provided her with love, support, and a sense of emotional security. Susan's life took a positive trajectory and she began to thrive. Her experiences with bullying had shaped her resilience and empathy, allowing her to connect with others on a deep level. We all know similar stories from people in our own lives, some who overcome trauma, while others seem to remain trapped by it. How does this happen? Why do we witness such different outcomes? The answer to this question can be found in the psychology of Alfred Adler. Adler, one of three great psychoanalysts of the 20th century, alongside Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, has often been overshadowed despite his highly influential works and ideas. Although he was once a close associate of Freud, Adler diverged from him due to his differing views on human psychology. So how were their views different? Well, let's just say that Adler did not fully subscribe to the concept of trauma. Here's what he said. No experience is inherently a cause of success or failure. We do not suffer from the shock of our experiences, commonly referred to as trauma. Instead, we make of them what aligns with our purposes. We are self-determined by the meaning we assign to our experiences, and it is likely that we make a mistake when we take specific experiences as the sole basis for our future lives. Meanings are not determined by situations. Rather, we determine ourselves by the meanings we give to situations. Adler's perspective challenges the notion that shock from traumatic experiences directly dictates our future. Instead, he highlights the significance of individual interpretation and the meaning we attach to our experiences in shaping our lives. Now let's delve back into the story of John and Susan. How did their adult lives turn out to be so radically different despite both of them enduring childhood bullying? Let's analyze John first. His initial social interactions with peers were painful, which gradually led him to develop a negative attitude towards the social environment, ultimately leading to a complete withdrawal. He created fear in his mind, a fear that stripped him of the ability to form meaningful social connections with his peers. He started to believe that people were inherently cruel, leading him to view the world through a black and white lens. On the other hand, Susan experienced the same painful experiences during her childhood, yet she developed a completely different mindset later in life, one that proved beneficial to her. Why did she develop a different attitude? It was because she ascribed a different meaning to those experiences. She decided to believe that the mistreatment she received from her peers was not a reflection of all people. Her thinking was, I need to find the right people. I may face hurt along the way, but eventually I will find them because they exist somewhere. John, on the other hand, believed that isolating himself was the solution. He held the belief that if he tried to find friends, he would inevitably get hurt because people are inherently cruel, and it simply wasn't worth the effort. It was easier for John to adopt this kind of attitude because it allowed him to stay within the confines of his comfort zone. In essence, he lacked the courage to pursue happiness. Alfred Adler aptly stated, "Courage is not an ability one either possesses or lacks. Courage is the willingness to engage in risk-taking behavior, regardless of whether the consequences are unknown or possibly adverse. We are capable of courageous behavior provided we are willing to engage in it." Adler also believed we use traumatic experiences for the achievement of our goals. John used his trauma for his goal, which was to avoid dealing with the outside world. Adler is not saying that horrible events from the past don't have any effect on the present. He is simply stating that we have more power over them than we usually think, and they do not necessarily define our future life. We all define our own lives according to the meaning we give to those past experiences. Adler was different from the other great psychoanalysts, in that he didn't focus on the causes of someone's unhappiness. Instead, he tried to figure out the purpose of someone's behavior that was making them unhappy. His focus was more on the present and the future rather than the past. He argued that human behavior could be explained teleologically as opposed to etiological explanations. Etiology deals with the study of causes or origins. On the other hand, teleology examines the purpose or finality of something. According to Adler's perspective, if John had a normal physical appearance and wasn't bullied in childhood, he would still try to find excuses to avoid people to some degree. Adler also posited that there are two primary ways people deal with their inferiorities in life: confronting the issue head-on or retreating into safeguarding behaviors. Individuals who choose the path of safeguarding behaviors, as in John's case, often develop beliefs that shield them from exposing themselves and potentially damaging their fragile self-esteem. This way, they can justify to themselves and others around them that there is nothing they can do about it and that it is out of their control. Those who completely withdraw from facing the challenge of overcoming their inferiorities tend to develop an inferiority complex. Adler emphasized that the feeling of inferiority is not a disease, it is rather a stimulant to healthy, normal striving and development. It becomes a pathological condition only when the sense of inadequacy overwhelms the individual and, far from stimulating them to useful activity, makes them depressed and incapable of development. The contrasting attitudes and choices made by John and Susan showcase the significant impact of mindset and beliefs on one's trajectory in life. While John retreated and embraced a self-protective outlook, Susan chose to seek out the right connections, taking risks despite the potential for hurt. These differing approaches led to vastly different outcomes for both individuals. Understanding the role of mindset and courage in navigating life's challenges can empower individuals to pursue personal growth and build meaningful connections, even in the face of adversity.
Anyway, but yeah, like the idea that, you manifested like this cop, this police officer into your life to pull you over while you were speeding or something like that. I'm just going to say it straight. No, there are people out there who are just assholes. They're called cops. And, then they pulled you over.
And they're trying to manifest a power trip for themselves.
Yeah, right. So, anyway, let's keep reading. Some say that there's no quote-unquote right way to manifest, while others claim it won't work if you don't, quote, connect to the spiritual world, end quote, first. Scripting can, and that's a process, scripting can either mean writing down your desire or writing down your desire precisely 33 times for 3 days, and then finishing it with, quote, all this manifests and better, end quote, just in case the universe decides to send even more than what you asked for. Manifesting can also be surprisingly mathematical. There are special numbers associated with it. 1111 and 444 are quote-unquote angel numbers sent from the universe, as well as special sound frequencies for manifesting specific wants. 528 hertz is the love frequency. Okay, I want to stop on that for a second. I want to stop here for a moment. So, okay. Yeah, scripting, where you're writing it down and then, do it for precisely 33 times for 3 days and then finishing it with you saying, quote, all this manifests and better, end quote. This is one of the big problems with manifesting. Okay. Part of why I wanted to cover this is I do want the House of Cards to fall down. Like, I do want to poke at it and show where, okay, here's the reality, or here's where, look, this doesn't fit, this doesn't make any sense, and so on. The general idea is that manifesting, or what comes out of the New Thought movement, goes all the way back. One of the earliest things people like to point at is what's called the Emerald Tablet, okay, which is the source of the very famous saying, as above, so below. Okay. The theory is that the Emerald Tablet was written by Thoth, so it's ancient Egyptian, so that it is at least thousands of years old. Okay. But there's inherent problems with this. So if this all works by you speaking in English, a language that you could say, okay, is kind of it's Germanic and kind of based off of Latin, but that didn't exist thousands of years ago. How could that possibly work, today? Like, if this concept of manifesting is ancient and is a way that the universe operates, perhaps even before humanity existed, or is based upon Egyptian magic or whatever the basis happens to be. Bottom line is the basis is not something that was done in English.
Oh, how do you know that even matters, though?
So that's...
What if it's just the feeling, the intention that matters?
That's exactly where I was going to go. The argument would be that, well, it doesn't matter about that. What matters is the intention that you are putting out there. I would still argue that this creates an inherent problem. The inherent problem is, that I've brought up 1 billion times, is that English is a mercantile language. It is a language of trade. Okay? And even if you believe that what you say and feel in manifesting matters, I would argue the language you do it in absolutely matters. And that, we have this idea, the concept of manifesting, or of like calling out to the angels and using specific sigils or angel numbers and all this stuff. This is far from new. And it's even the New Thought movement, it wasn't new then. We could go back to the concept of a Faustian bargain, right? Of the story of Faust. Now, in that story, right, Dr. Faust makes a deal with the devil. He makes a deal with, again, and that's key word, he makes a deal with the devil.
Mephistopheles.
Yeah, Mephistopheles, right? And when he does so, there's a trade-off. Okay, you can have all of this in your life, but at the end, basically, I get your soul, right? Or you're going to work for me, or you're going to be my servant when this is all said and done. Okay.
Yeah, Mephistopheles doesn't say how he's going to give him what he wants, or what's going to happen after he gets what he wants.
Right, but the idea is that there's a deal that is made. There's a bargain being done, okay? Here's the inherent problem with that, because that is, the story of Faust is really, is a tale, an older tale, a centuries-old tale of manifesting, okay, of this idea of, attracting in what you want. the reason that there's a deal there in that story, my argument would be, is because the fucker's is written in a Germanic language. It's written in a mindset of a language that believes in, that is transactional in and of itself. When I say mercantile, it means economic, right? It's trade. Like there is a bargain being made, even if it's barter or something along those lines, whatever it happens to be. And I would argue that is in itself, even if you believed in manifesting, that creates a problem itself, in that you are putting out there your intention in the universe. I mean, your internal thought process matters. Like your internal dialogue matters. And you're automatically creating this transactional setup with the universe in doing this, because you're doing it in English.
Okay, so if that's how you feel, then what do you think about all these people that are using manifesting just to get rich, or to bring, like, physical objects into their lives?
Well, I haven't gotten into, like, is manifesting even legit or not,
Because there's a lot of people that just want more money, and they're trying to manifest it. Right.
Well, there are, to the credit of some of these, kind of new age, new thought, or these woo-woo types who espouse manifesting, they'll bring up the very fine point that, okay, so you think about $50 million, right, being in your bank account or something, or you put up a check that says $1 million, like on your, like Jack Campbell would talk about this in The Secret. Actually, he puts up a thing that's like, oh, I want $1 million, or I want this or whatever, and so he puts up a check that says $1 million to sign, signed to him. The thing is, like, if you're just thinking that, all you're thinking about is money, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're thinking about that you're going to make $1 million. You might be thinking you're going to lose $1 million, or you might owe $1 million. And if you're thinking about money itself is nothing. Money isn't real, right? Like, money is an agreement between two people. Okay, this is something, or at least two people, okay, right? It's a medium of exchange. So money is a problem in itself. What the argument would be that some of the smarter people into manifesting would say is, no, don't think about money. Think about what you want. Think about the physical thing that you want money to do, or think about what you want that money to do. Don't think about the money. And I think they're right in bringing that up. Like, I mean, it's clever, yes, but I think they're right to bring that up, because that's ultimately getting at what you actually want, and it's visualizing, how you want your life to be, as compared to just like, oh, I just want this money. And like, but again, money, what is money? It's as abstract as language and anything else. It doesn't really represent anything, ultimately. I mean, the U.S. dollar, what is the U.S. dollar? It's nuclear weapons. That's all it is. It doesn't have any actual value. Anyway, does that answer your question on that, or do you have pushback?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to know what you thought about that in regards to, like, the transactional mindset that people have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, because I can think of, and look, just to give a little background, I mean, I did watch The Secret. I'm super familiar with the New Thought movement and the works of Ralph Waldo Emerson, Napoleon Hill, Wallace D. Wattles, Charles Hannell, go down the list. I've read them all of them, okay? And even some of the modern people, like, like A Happy Pocket Full of Money, like books like that are more modern. They'll tell you in that to basically think, in like, put it out there, this idea, and think, like, the simplest manifestation you can do is, I love money and money loves me. And you just keep repeating that. Okay. Now, I kind of want to get into this idea of, repetition, which actually plays off of a New Testament concept of pray without ceasing. Hopefully we'll get to that. But regardless, here's the thing, if you do that, and let's say that even worked. What that's basically saying is, I love money and money loves me. And so if you keep repeating that in your head, at least, you don't even have to say it, you will attract more money into your life. But that's not saying anything about how that money gets made. Because at the end of the day, works, it's not just thoughts. Like, money doesn't just appear. You're going to have to do something, whatever that happens to be.
And if your mind is on it more often, then you're going to make choices that lead to that more often.
Sure. And yeah, and we'll get to that. But okay, you love money and money loves you, and let's say that got you more money, but what is the process? You might have to work 2 jobs, 3 or 4 jobs. You might have to veritably kill yourself. And that manifesting is working, but you're killing yourself for it. As to where, if you were to buy into these rules, you would say, well, you don't just say, I love money and money loves me. You would append perhaps to that money comes easily and freely to me. That way you're saying, okay, but at least I don't have to work my ass off. Again, this is, all of this stuff is such a mess. But I think that, again, when you get, if you want to have more precision in it, or if you were going to make rules or think about it more, like I said, it falls apart very easily. But, the appeal usually comes from some kind of historicity, not like it's a new thing. Otherwise, if it's just a new thing, most people don't believe it anyway. Okay. But yeah, English wasn't even a thing yet. So that's just one point I really wanted to get out there. The numerology of it, like this idea of using angel numbers and everything, I always have a problem with that, just because, honestly, that gets into language itself, but that's a separate conversation that we'll get into. However, this idea of the love frequency of certain, like 528 hertz or 432 hertz and things like this, I think there might be something to that.
528 hertz frequency has been determined to be nearly the precise center of the entire electromagnetic color spectrum. There's only one number in the entire numbering system whereby the electromagnetic color spectrum is the same as the sound system. That one number is 528. Both the same in color and sound. 528 hertz frequency.
A miraculous key that opened doors that no man can close and close doors that no man can open. 528. It will change your life in the most beneficial way. And now we have substantive evidence, massive amounts of evidence that is what 528 is. Ultimately, what has happened with this planet is that we are in dissonance to another note, another frequency. It turned out that when we discovered the original musical scale, there was not just 6, but a total of 9 core creative frequencies to the universe. That is, everything in the universe is made from 9 notes, only 9. And that the first 6 are the solfeggio, and then there's 3 additional ones that form a perfect circle of sound. And that perfect circle of sound looks something like this. If you graph it. So the first 6 notes, 396, 417, 528, 639, 741, 852, was the original solfeggio scale. The 528 that you can see on my left in green is the color green. It's the heart of the rainbow. That's the miracle note from the original solfeggio note, from the original solfeggio scale. And the other note that you see, 741, which is part of nature, is called the devil's interval in musicology. That when you play 741 with 528, it creates such an annoying and dissonant energy, diseasing, stressful, that if you continue to listen to it, you could die. And so that the concept here is interesting. In the world today, we have people who are controlling virtually everything economically, geopolitically. Their agenda has been population manipulation, population control for millennia. They have held the secret knowledge, the ancient music, by which the pyramids were constructed based on the math. All of the universe is constructed according to these 9 tones. They knew about them. In fact, they instituted. In fact, it was the Rockefeller Foundation in 1939 that instituted the world's standard tuning. The Western world tunes to a 440 hertz frequency. That when you tune your instrument to that, the F sharp note is 741. Precisely.
The A440 is what now is the standard tuning. If you go A439, you're closer to one of the Creator's tones. If you go A441, you're closer to one of the Creator's original tones. That's how precisely it has been manipulated. To do what? To shut down the 95% of your brain, particularly the right brain that operates the heart mind for the divine human community. Here is a metaphor so that you begin to understand what we're talking about. When you go driving your car and your channel on the radio is tuned to a station and you're grooving to the music, you love that music. As you get farther and farther away from the broadcasting tower, that music gets static. You start to lose the signal from the clear channel, broadcast, and it gets staticky. When it gets staticky, you get a little annoyed. But you want to listen to it. You really have a heart for that music, so you continue to listen to it for another 10, 15 miles, and suddenly it becomes so annoying that you just get disgusted. You go, and you shut it off. And if you continue to listen to it, you get sick. That's what we're talking about here. Except you don't even know that you've been listening to the static your whole life. You don't even know what the true resonant frequency is because it has been kept from you. So in other words, the master composer, master conductor of the Universal Orchestra is singing love songs in 5/8, uplifting everything simultaneously. And we're the only species out of tune and accepting static for the clear channel. Dr. Masaru Emoto. He goes up on stage and he has a triangular, a musical triangle that he hits, like in an orchestra. He's hitting it over here. He hits it, bing, and about 30 yards or 30 feet away is his interpreter standing here with the same exact replica of that same size triangle. Frequency tuned to the same frequency. And he tells his interpreter to put a microphone next to it. And suddenly this one starts to resonate. He hits that one over there. This one starts resonating. How much of your body is full of water? They used to say when I was at Harvard School of Public Health, the truth was back then about 86% of your body, well hydrated, was water. Today they tell us it's only 75%. Hogwash, they've been dehydrating everybody with the poisons. 93% of the function of DNA is light and sound reception and transmission. Photon, reception, transmission for intercellular communication and cellular upregulation. You know what cellular upregulation means? It means precipitation. And then now, every millisecond, instant second, you're remanifesting right now in water. Water is the most energy conductive of all of the materials. It's a superconductor. Let me give you the fundamental, the rudimentary origin of the numbers. Here it is. The most important numbers, 3, 6s, and 9s. Again, Tesla, who created Tesla coil. Tesla coils, energy amplifiers. Your DNA is an energy amplifier, a coil, operating by the 3, 6s, and 9s primarily. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, you've probably looked at engines or motors, magnets that have been wound with copper wire. When you do that, when you wind the copper, coil the copper around the magnet, it enhances the energy dramatically. That's what your DNA is. It's an antenna to the Creator. Every single cell of your body has this energy capability. It has this divine intelligence. What does that mean? That means the first entities that you should be communing with in order to uplift yourself, sustain yourself, heal yourself, is the billions of cells in your body that have its own unique genetic intelligence, its own sacred spiral to the Creator. And so this is the structure of the way that the universe operates, which does fabulous for us, our understanding of some of the most wonderful pieces of information to allow us to live a faithful life. A life according to the law, according to the matrix. Here is the simple way to analyze this. You've heard of what goes around comes around. You've heard of as you sow, so shall you reap. So this explains it. Let's say that you're here and you are putting out negative thoughts, negative behaviors, negative actions. It's all energy. The neurology in your brain's powerful. 86% of you is God water. So now that's going out, and it goes out, and here's what happens. It goes out, it goes up and down. This is called the event horizon. You shoot down through the middle of the event horizon, which is the black hole, comes out and spins back around, ultimately comes right back, bringing to you karma, bringing to you divine judgment. It's all according to the mathematical matrix. It's certain, it doesn't lie, it's always consistent. There's nothing missing, nothing broken in it.
So I'm going to keep reading here. There are manifesting adjacent emoji, the Nazar amulet, which in many cultures' folklore is believed to ward off an evil eye, is a favorite, and guides on how to create your own sigils, a personal motif often in witchcraft. The whole thing can feel vaguely Christian at times, the angels for one, and at others by deemed demonic, for example, witchcraft. Like many New Agey practices, manifesting comes with a fair share of paradoxes where if you think about it too hard, none of it makes any sense. And yet its ideas have stood the test of time. The law of attraction, the belief that all your thoughts eventually become things, and if you think positively, positive things will come to you, has existed since the New Thought spiritual movement of the 19th century. Anyway, at this point, they get into all of that, about the New Thought movement and everything. I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit. Witchcraft, for example, has also enjoyed a renaissance in the social media age, extending beyond the boundaries of neo-pagan Wicca and becoming more open to individual interpretation and practices. For better or worse, it's also become more mainstream. Earlier this summer, witches on TikTok circulated a rumor that, quote-unquote, baby or inexperienced witches were casting hexes on the moon, and corporatized Urban Outfitters and Sephora and other retail chains have received backlash in recent years for attempting to sell one-size-fits-all occult products that appropriate spiritual beliefs from indigenous cultures. Anyway, you can kind of stop on a lot of that. The point is, this is like a thing. This is out there. People are buying into it, metaphorically, literally even. It's all over the place. Now, you and I recently, Ellen, we've gotten on Instagram. It's been months now, but fairly recently. And I'm seeing this stuff all the time. This like, oh, I'm manifesting this era of my life. I'm manifesting this, and type yes if you want to have $20,000 magically appear in your life and, and all this jazz. It's just, it's all over the place. And, I'll admit, as somebody who has been studying Kabbalah almost his entire life, and has researched, shall we say, the occult, the esoteric, the mystical for almost as long, seeing all this stuff take hold, these people, so many of these people I feel are just, they're clever salespeople. They're absolutely full of shit.
Yeah.
Akin to what we were saying earlier about like the speed at which you take in information, like what we were talking about with How Not to Age, these are things that, even if you believe that they're real, like these varying spells or manifestations or creating sigils and all this stuff, this is stuff that the people that invented this shit, whether it was decades ago or centuries ago, spent their whole lives perfecting and like getting to the point that we could even read books about it on. And those books are not short, by the way. Like this is not something that you can just go on Instagram or TikTok or wherever and suddenly, ooh, I'm a magician, or ooh, I'm a witch, or ooh, I'm this. Like this is stuff that takes years at least of research and putting in the time. And I have even more points kind of beyond that, but what do you have on anything that's been shared or said so far?
Yeah, I agree. I think essentially what you're saying is that if you genuinely want to manifest something in your life, it takes more than just thinking positive thoughts over and over again.
Right.
And I agree with that. And anything that could even be roughly considered magic or witchcraft, it's not just like reading a spell. There's a lot more to it than that.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Did you want to get into, earlier you were talking about manifesting, and you said, but you had to put in the work, and then there was a point beyond that. Did you want to get into that here? Do you recall what that was?
Yeah, I can go into it now.
Sure.
So what I meant when I said that, I was working hard towards this goal that I had, but in a way I was also manifesting. I just didn't really know it. I spent, so many years of my life just working towards this goal of, becoming a scientist. That is what my, lifelong, like if I achieved that, I would have done the thing, like I would have fulfilled my ambition. And the whole time that I was putting in all of this hard work to achieve that goal, I was also, in a sense, manifesting, because there's a lot of thinking and focusing and just like not giving up. And in the end, even after I, graduated and got my degree, things started to happen to me like very quickly, very easily. And I was ready for it. I was open to it. And I guess what I mean by that is that I spent long enough kind of building my life around this, becoming a scientist. And it takes more than just getting your degree to become one. Like, you also have to, like, get into the field afterwards.
Yes.
And, the opportunities that I was searching for, I found more than I expected.
Right.
And I think that was kind of a bit of luck, but I feel like maybe there was something there of, sort of along the lines of law of attraction. It was like I spent the time telling the universe, like, this is what I want, and showing by all of the hard work that I put in.
Right.
And then once I finally got to a certain point, all of that came back to benefit me.
Yeah. So, but you had to put in the work, right?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So here's what I want to kind of get in on this and try and bring some, even though, a lot of people listening to this right now might think, holy shit, look, this is all bullshit, and, coming from a hardcore atheist scientific materialist perspective or something along those lines. And hey, I get you. I hear you. I know where you're coming from. And I also respect your opinion, on the matter. But I want to try and bring some, reality might be the wrong word, but I'm going to say it. I want to try and bring some reality to all this. Because here's the thing. I do think, that manifesting perhaps more in the sense that you're talking about, Ellen, I do think it's a thing. Okay, there is no such thing as manifesting that you type out, or if you say this or think that or whatever, that suddenly, boom, in no time and with no effort whatsoever on your part other than typing something or writing something or thinking something, that thing suddenly comes into your life. It just does not work that way. Okay. And why people, I think, feel that makes sense, and why people today feel that that's how it works, and that they're willing to try it. Well, for one, they're willing to try it because it comes at almost zero lift. Like, there's no cost involved. But the other thing, somewhat, I think, comes down to a certain... They have bought into other people's visions, other people's lifestyle obsessions, not their own. It's not coming from within themselves. It's an external lifestyle obsession. And I think there's a degree, I don't like using this term, but I'm going to use it. There's a degree of entitlement. I think that some people feel that, no, I should just automatically have this or that, or I deserve this or that. And, again, that's not how this works.
This is one of the most interesting reads I've come across. It's rather complex and takes a while to digest, but it's 100% worth it. It's an official declassified CIA document, and a terrific analysis of consciousness and beyond, known as the Gateway Process. While it's an older document and has been declassified for a while now, the fact that modern developments in science, quantum physics, psychedelics, and neurobiology confirm what's written within those pages is nothing short of outstanding. It explains consciousness in a profound and analytical way and merges knowledge from mystics from Hindu, Buddhist, and Tibetan cultures to contemporary scientific knowledge of Planck distance, Einstein's theory of relativity, and the works of Niels Bohr. The cosmic spiral and torus is everything, and everything is one. It seems as though individual consciousness is pulled from the collective consciousness using the frequency vibrations of the being. This applies to humans, whales, fungus, and amoeba. Mystics of past and present, including all ancient religions, understood these concepts thousands of years ago. Still, it takes much to open the minds of the most pragmatic, self-conscious, and uptight people. 11. Consciousness and energy. Before our explanation can proceed any further, it is essential to define the mechanism by which the human mind exercises the function known as consciousness, and to describe the way in which that consciousness operates to deduce meaning from the stimuli which it receives. To do this, we will first consider the fundamental character of the material world in which we have our physical existence, in order to accurately perceive the raw stuff with which our consciousness must work. The first point which needs to be made is that the two terms, matter and energy, tend to be misleading if taken to indicate two distinctly different states of existence in the physical world that we know it. Indeed, if the term matter is taken to mean solid substance as opposed to energy, which is understood to mean a force of some sort, then the use of the former is entirely misleading. Science now knows that both the electrons which spin in the energy field located around the nucleus of the atom and the nucleus itself are made up of nothing more than oscillating energy grids. Solid matter, in the strict construction of the term, simply does not exist. Rather, atomic structure is composed of oscillating energy grids surrounded by other oscillating energy grids, which orbit at extraordinarily high speeds. In his book, Stalking the Wild Pendulum, Itzhak Bentov gives the following figures. The energy grid, which composes the nucleus of the atom, vibrates at approximately 1022 Hertz, which means 10 followed by 22 zeros. At 70 degrees Fahrenheit, an atom oscillates at the rate of 1015 Hertz. An entire molecule composed of a number of atoms bound together in a single energy field vibrates in the range of 109 Hertz. A live human cell vibrates at approximately 103 Hertz. The point to be made is that the entire human being, brain, consciousness, and all is like the universe which surrounds him, nothing more or less than an extraordinarily complex system of energy fields. The so-called states of matter are actually variances in the state of energy, and human consciousness is a function of the interaction of energy in two opposite states, motion versus rest, in a manner described in the following paragraph. 12. Holograms. Energy creates, stores, and retrieves meaning in the universe by projecting or expanding at certain frequencies in a three-dimensional mode that creates a living pattern called a hologram. The concept of the hologram can be most easily understood by using an example cited by Bentov, in which he asks the reader to visualize a bowl full of water into which 3 pebbles are dropped. As the ripples created by the simultaneous entry of the 3 pebbles radiate outward towards the rim of the bowl, Bentov further asks the reader to visualize that the surface of the water is suddenly flash frozen, so that the ripple pattern is preserved instantly. The ice is removed, leaving the 3 pebbles still laying at the bottom of the bowl. Then the ice is exposed to a powerful, coherent source of light, such as a laser. The result will be a 3-dimensional model or representation of the position of the 3 pebbles suspended in midair. Holograms are capable of encoding so much detail that, for example, it is possible to take a holographic projection of a glass of swamp water and view it under magnification to see small organisms not visible to the naked eye when the glass of water itself is examined. The whole concept of holography, despite its scientific implications, has only been known to physicists since the underlying mathematical principles were worked out by Denis Gabor in 1947. He later won a Nobel Prize for his work. Laboratory demonstration of Gabor's work only occurred years later following the invention of the laser, as biologist Lyle Watson explains. The purest kind of light available to us is that produced by a laser, which sends out a beam in which all the waves are of one frequency, like those made by an ideal pebble in a perfect pond. When 2 laser beams touch, they produce an interference pattern of light and dark ripples that can be recorded on a photographic plate. And if one of the beams, instead of coming directly from the laser, is reflected first off an object such as a human face, the resulting pattern will be very complex indeed, but it can still be recorded. The record will be a hologram of the face. 13. The part encodes the whole. Of further importance is the fact that even if we dropped our frozen hologram of the ripple pattern on the floor and broke it into a number of pieces, each individual piece would recreate the entire holographic image all by itself. The smaller the piece, the fuzzier and more distorted would be the resulting holographic projection. But the fact remains that a whole projection would nonetheless be made. The key to creating any hologram is that the energy in motion must interact with energy in a state of rest, or non-motion. In the foregoing example, the pebbles represent energy in motion, while the water, before its agitation by the pebbles, represents the energy at a state of rest. To activate, or in effect, to perceive the meaning of a holograph, energy, in this case a coherent light source such as a laser beam, must be passed through the interference pattern generated by the interaction between the moving energy and the energy at rest. In the simple example given by Bentov, this requirement was fulfilled by holding the frozen interference pattern in front of the coherent light to project the 3-dimensional holographic image, its meaning, into space. As Marilyn Ferguson, editor of the Brain Mind Bulletin, tells us, another feature of a hologram is its efficiency. Billions of bits of information can be stored in a tiny space. The pattern of the holographic photograph is stored everywhere on the plate. 14. The consciousness matrix. The universe is composed of interacting energy fields, some at rest and some in motion. It is, in and of itself, one gigantic hologram of unbelievable complexity. According to the theories of Karl Pribram, a neuroscientist at Stanford University, and David Bohm, a physicist at the University of London, the human mind is also a hologram which attunes itself to the universal hologram by the medium of energy exchange, thereby deducing meaning and achieving the state which we call consciousness. With respect to states of expanded or altered consciousness, such as gateway uses, the process operates in the following way. As energy passes through various aspects of the universal hologram, and is perceived by the electrostatic fields which comprise the human mind, the holographic images being conveyed are projected upon those electrostatic fields of the mind, and are perceived or understood to the extent that the electrostatic field is operating at a frequency and amplitude that can harmonize with, and therefore read, the energy carrier wave pattern passing through it. Changes in the frequency and amplitude of the electrostatic field, which comprises the human mind, determine the configuration and hence the character of the holographic energy matrix, which the mind projects to intercept meaning directly from the holographic transmissions of the universe. Then, to make sense of what the holographic image is saying to it, the mind proceeds to compare the image just received with itself. Specifically, it does this by comparing the image received with that part of its own hologram, which constitutes memory. By registering differences in geometric form and in energy frequency, the consciousness perceives. As psychologist Keith Floyd puts it, contrary to what everyone knows is so, it may not be the brain that produces consciousness, but rather consciousness that creates the appearance of the brain. 15. Brain in phase. The consciousness process is most easily envisaged if we picture the holographic input with a three-dimensional grid system superimposed over it, such that all of the energy patterns contained within can be described in terms of three-dimensional geometry using mathematics to reduce the data to the two-dimensional form. Bentov states that scientists suspect that the human mind operates on a simple binary go-no-go system, as do all digital computers. Therefore, once it superimposes a three-dimensional matrix over holographic information it wishes to interpret, and reduces that information mathematically to two-dimensional form, it can completely process it using its fundamental binary system, just as any computer made by the hand of man can process volumes of data and make various comparisons between the data and information stored in its digital memory. Our minds operate in the same way, perceiving by comparison only. Bentov states the proposition this way: our whole reality is constructed by constantly making such comparisons. Whenever we perceive something, we always perceive differences only. In states of expanded consciousness, the right hemisphere of the human brain, in its holistic, nonlinear, and nonverbal mode of functioning, acts as the primary matrix or receptor for this holographic input, while, by operating in phase or coherence with the right brain, the left hemisphere provides the secondary matrix through its binary, computer-like method of functioning to screen further the data by comparison and reduce it to a discrete, two-dimensional form. 16. Evaluation. To the extent that Gateway succeeds in bringing about a refinement in the energy matrix of the mind, it succeeds in expanding or altering human consciousness so that it can perceive without recourse to the intercession of the physical senses, such that ever more of the universal hologram, not, of course, accessible by sense perception, can ultimately be perceived and understood. Marilyn Ferguson has written that the theories of Pribram and Bohm appear to account for all transcendental experience, paranormal events, and even normal perceptual oddities. She goes on to say of Pribram, currently he is proposing a startling, all-encompassing model that is generating considerable excitement among those intrigued by the mysteries of human consciousness. His holographic model marries brain research to theoretical physics. It accounts for normal perception and simultaneously takes the paranormal and transcendental experiences out of the supernatural by explaining them as a part of nature. Like certain strange discoveries of quantum physics, the radical reorientation of this theory suddenly makes sense of paradoxical sayings of mystics throughout the ages. 17. Self-cognition. To complete our outline of the process by which the mind achieves and exercises consciousness, we must also describe the mechanism which accounts for the aspect of human thought that differentiates it from the consciousness of plants or animals, i.e., self-cognition. Humans not only know, but they know what they know. They are able to monitor the process of their own thinking and maintain an awareness of it. Moreover, they can conduct a comparative assessment, evaluating the functioning of their thought processes against various objective standards they have adopted. Human consciousness can do this because it has the capacity to duplicate aspects of its own hologram, project them out, perceive that projection, put it through comparison with the memory aspect, where its evaluation standards of measure are stored, of its own hologram, and measure or sense the difference using three-dimensional geometry and then binary go, no-go polls to yield verbal cognition about the self.
I'm a big fan of one of the, major proponents of this idea, that being Charles Haanel, who wrote The Master Key System, which I think is one of the greatest books ever written. In that, he talks about how there is a substance that exists throughout the universe. Okay, it is a substance, and your thoughts actually control this substance that exists between you and other objects. Okay, and that your thought process will mold that substance into a direction and this is where it's different, because it's not saying that you are forming, like that your thoughts are somehow molding the formless void into a thing. Like, you think about a cup. You have a very specific cup that you want. He's not saying, Charles Haanel isn't saying you think about it and then the formless substance will turn into that cup. What he's saying is that your intention is going out there, and the formless substance is like the wind. It's like this current, and it will start to move things more towards your direction. It doesn't become the thing. It just moves things, somewhat in that direction. Okay. And that's a very different thing. And this is the problem with The Secret and a lot of this like pop manifestation stuff, if I'm to call it that, is it's missing the work that has to get done, and it has a fundamental misunderstanding of what the original New Thought leaders were really talking about. Is they were not saying that you create the thing, it was saying that you were kind of moving things in that direction, or making your environment more amenable to allow for that. But that includes getting in the work. Do you have thoughts?
Yeah, it's kind of like having the wind at your back.
Yeah.
Instead of like going against the current.
Yes, exactly. In fact, that's beautiful that you said that. That's one of the most ancient, in fact, that's an ancient Egyptian saying, may the winds be at our backs. And I think that comes out of all things, the Emerald Tablet, which, by the way, you did a tremendous reading of the Emerald Tablet.
Thank you.
People can go to audiotheancients.xyz and get a copy of that. This was years ago that you did that. But in these, kind of, and yeah, like the Emerald Tablet gets into alchemy and all that stuff. Look, there's a lot of truth, in my opinion, in all of that. Okay? There's a lot of bullshit extrapolations from it, but there's a lot of truth in this stuff. But yeah, you hit it exactly. That is how it goes. But this is really what I think a lot of people are missing, is that you have to put in the work. And there's another point I don't want to get into, but I do want to talk about putting in that work. In some way, like, and something else that I think is becoming popular again would be the concept of Gnosticism. One of my biggest problems with the concept of Gnosticism is that, there's this demiurge out there. There's this God, or, Satan, whatever you want to call him. And he's really the reason that life sucks. He's really he created all the bad things. He's the reason that there's like all these terrible things. It's not your fault. So effectively, the Gnostics would say, and I think that there's a lot of other ideologies out there that do this. They basically argue it's not your fault. When I would say, and not just me, but other shall we say, ideological lineages, and certainly magical ones, or mystical ones, esoteric ones, would say, no, it is your fault. Now, yes, there are other individuals out there. It's not like, and this gets into one of my biggest problems with manifesting. It effectively, and maybe we got into this last time, in the last Sovereign Tech X, but it effectively treats everything and everyone else like an NPC. We kind of talked about that in the last Sovereign Tech X.
Yeah, and you're saying that's not realistic, right? Because everybody has their own willpower.
Exactly. Yeah, but you think that all the resources, all these things around you are just there for you. Once you figure out how to manifest it, it's there to be there for your pleasure. And look, that's not how this works. And so one of the points I kind of want to get at is I'm not surprised that manifesting is having a moment, as it were, in 2023, is having a moment on the internet, because the internet makes everything seem like an NPC to you. The internet does not reflect reality. It makes everybody seem like, oh yeah, that person's just a like. That person's just a comment.
It makes you feel more like the center of the universe.
Exactly. And that is a core problem with this concept of manifesting. And one of the main things I wanted to get at. And this speaks to sort of what I was starting to hint at with like using the English language. There's the old saying, the medium is the message, or the message is the medium, however that goes. But the idea that, okay, yeah, this idea seems to make sense to you because of the platform that you're on. Sure, you're on Instagram, so you're none of this is real. None of these people are actually real. They don't have their own agency. They're just something that you view, through the lens, or should I say the glass, of your smartphone or your computer or whatever. Okay. And I think that's what a lot of people are missing, is they don't understand that, they see these things happening. They think that this stuff's coming into their life, but a lot of times it's all online. And again, the algorithm in its own way, ironically, algorithms do work in a way akin to what actual magical or mystical practice would, where you're putting your impressions, out into the universe, your intentions of what you want. The algorithms kind of operate similarly, but you don't really control the algorithm. More, the algorithm just reacts to what you're putting out there.
Yeah, and the algorithms aren't all-encompassing like the literal universe is.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's much smaller scale, and at the end of the day, honestly, the algorithm's controlling you, because it has set parameters that it won't let you go beyond. As to where maybe with the universe might be a little bit different, but regardless. So this is a pretty key point to bring up, is that you cannot manifest things when you hold no actual value in them. That's not how that works. Conversely, also, if you don't value yourself, like this speaks to the work you were talking about putting in earlier, Ellen. If you don't value yourself, and I think a lot of us, and this is why I think this idea that, if you just think it in your mind, it's going to happen. No, I think people tell themselves lies all day long. Lies of how they feel about themselves, of their own value.
Oh yeah, or how they feel about other people that they keep in their lives.
Right.
Even though they might not be the best.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And we all have challenges with this. No one's claiming to be perfect here. Okay? But this is one of the biggest things. It's like, I want this car, or I want this kind of gal in my life. It's like, I want this perfect 10 woman, to fall in love with me, and I want all this jazz, and, I deserve it, and why not? I'm great. I'm this and that. It's like, well, you might be telling yourself that, but are you? Have you looked in the mirror? Have you gotten a second opinion?
Do you actually believe that?
Right. Well, that's it. That's really it, is do you actually believe what you're saying? Because that's the thing. Again, in our internal dialogue, we can say all kinds of bullshit. And, I think you were on earlier about your point that, what do you actually feel? What are your actual intents? Here's the thing. Feelings, emotions that we have names for them, ironically, in English. Things like fear, love. I mean, those are a couple of big ones, but of course, even those have millions of subcategories, right? Okay. But ultimately, emotions, we just append words to them. Okay. But they're those words are they're shadows.
They can't capture the full experience.
Right. And so this is a very key thing to get, is that all of this stuff, everything really that we've been talking about here, is something that exists beyond language. Okay? And you need to, like, having... Okay, for example, if you want to attract... If you were wanting to attract certain things in your life, here I'm giving very conventional examples here. Okay, like there's this idea, everybody has heard of, BDE, right? Big dick energy. Okay, like, oh, he has that big dick energy. What does that mean? Okay, that means he has the popular concept behind this, people might think, why are you bringing this up? No, let's talk about it. The popular concept is, okay, the dude has a big dick. He recognizes that in Western civilization that means something. Like that has some kind of value or some kind of rarity, and so he has a confidence that he walks with. Okay, but here's the thing. All of that is unconscious, right?
Right.
I mean, all of that developed unconsciously. Like, okay, maybe he is in some way aware that there's a value, a perceived value anyway, in having a big dick or something like this. But ultimately, that energy, which is a fine word to use for it, is something that is completely unconscious. There are no words for it.
Because it influences every action.
Yes.
It's something that you can infer based on the way someone behaves.
Yes.
But it's not like they go up to people and say it.
Yeah, right. Or it's not like, and hopefully not, or they're probably in jail, they just pull it out,
Yeah.
like, look.
They don't have to repeat it to themselves.
No, right.
Because it's a firmly held belief.
Yes. So, and that's the point you have to get to. There's no language for that. There's nothing in the English. I mean, for fuck's sake, we have to use like these 3 words of big dick energy to explain what this sensation is. It has nothing really to do with his dick. His big dick isn't going to get him the job. Well, depends, I suppose. But you know what I mean? It's not that. It's... some industries I've worked in, that'll get you a job. But anyway, it's about the confidence. Okay? But what is that, even that confidence? What does it come from? It's this ineffable thing. Okay?
It's feeling that you are worthy to have whatever experience or benefit.
Right.
And to really be able to, like, fulfill whatever needs are there.
Exactly. Okay. So this is what's so difficult about all of this to understand, is that if there are things that you want in your life, if there are changes that you want in your life, they come down to you having more direct control over your, I don't want to just say your unconscious, because what even is that? Okay. But it is about understanding that there aren't words for it, that many things are just a means to an end, that there is work that has to get done.
Yeah, you still have to prove that you can do it.
Yeah, right. But that work is an action. And actions, in many ways, as well as sensations, are things that are beyond words. Okay? And so, I'm trying to bring all of this together to where it makes some kind of sense. But the bottom line being is that if manifesting, or one of the bottom lines I want to get to is that if manifesting seems to make sense to you online, that's because it does make sense through the platform that you're on. But that platform is not the universe, and it doesn't represent the universe. It's not real life. And so for all the people who say, oh yeah, this did this or that, and like, did I just manifest Captain crawling all over my desk right now?
I might have.
Well,
Sorry, I reached out to him.
Yeah, and he's wondering, why aren't we petting him? Anyway, we'll give him some. And now he's going nicely into your arms. Yeah, but this is the thing that people don't get. And that feeling, or that actually valuing yourself to where a lot of this could even say come into your life, is something that goes beyond words. You can tell yourself all day long, I'm amazing, I'm amazing, I'm amazing. But if you're not, you're not.
Yeah, you got to back it up.
Yeah, you've got to back it up. And it's okay. Like, It's just, and it's a lot of hard work.
It is.
It is. It's really a lot of hard work, and it can take years. But just be fucking patient. So
yeah, it took me like 10 years to get to where I am.
Sure, right. You know, but you got to be willing to put in that time. And I think another, you know, kind of a side problem to that is that people think that there's always very little time. And I would argue that's not true. Like,
no, you have all the time in the world.
Yeah, you might actually literally have all the time in the world.
It's all your time to do with as you please.
Yeah, right. So there's some other subjects I could get into with this, but again, a lot of these things, and this goes even beyond manifesting, a lot of it comes down to is that it's literally, it's an internet trope, but that's because it makes sense on the internet, not because it's how it works in real life. But I could spend a ton of time saying like, okay, you know, like, yeah, pick out this line from The Secret or people who talk about manifesting and all this stuff. And like, I would, you know, I could go, well, no, you know, based upon the person that invented that, this is what they meant and all this. And I could probably, you know, after talking about it even now, just for 40 minutes or so, you know, I could spend 2-3 hours doing that. And, you know, maybe I should do a live show. And,
yeah, maybe you should,
love it.
You know, do a whole separate show about manifestation.
Yeah. But no, it's crap. Pay attention to the fact that it, like, if it looks like it's working, it's part. I mean, this is another thing, like synchronicity. Okay, now there's synchronicities. You know, this is a completely separate subject, but there's synchronicities that, sure, you see them and you go, wow, that is wildly coincidental. I mean, one of the big things for people that I think they miss. I'm not saying synchronicities don't exist, but also we do exist in a time when information we're just flooded. I mean, it's everywhere. It's all over the place. And so the chances of any random thought you have, especially in your native tongue, whatever that happens to be, you know, and you're in that land where that tongue is dominant, you know, like synchronicities and things like that happening are exceptionally high now, higher than they've ever been before. So do you notice them more? Sure. Is that like because we live in the Matrix? No, it's because we're just awash in nonstop content, in nonstop info, in nonstop, you know, everything around you. That doesn't mean that this stuff doesn't happen. I'm just saying that, you know, the medium is the message. And I think people forget that, and it's so much more true today than it's ever been. So anyway, okay. Probably do a separate episode about, maybe I would do a whole episode about manifesting. That might be interesting. Now, another thing that we teased, we don't have to do it. We can just go into talking about Aquaman and have some fun. But another thing that we teased in the last episode was you said to me, it's like, we should have a conversation about all the problems with the Jedi in Star Wars.
Oh, man. That's a big conversation.
It is. We don't have to get, we'll save that for next time. Because I think that also gets into debunking a lot of these cultural ideas of what works, what's right and wrong, you know, that ironically play into concepts like manifesting, really, that I think are worthwhile talking about. We have lots of subjects we can get into. Maybe we should do some of those for the new show. But regardless, so we got manifesting out there. Do you have like a final statement you want to make on manifesting? Like, how do you feel when you see people say on Instagram, like, talking about it? What comes up for you?
Oh, I just think it sounds, how do I put this? Like, superficial? Yeah, superficial.
Yeah.
Superfluous.
Why is this so hard for me?
Superfluous.
It's late at night, folks.
Super fluffy.
Yeah, it's super fluffy.
Superfluous. That's the word I was trying to get out. Yeah, it just sounds like made up to me. It just sounds like people are imagining things and wishing that they were real. And if they just like talk about it enough and make it sound real, then maybe it will be. Mm-hmm. And I guess I don't necessarily have a problem with people fooling themselves into thinking that something is true, but that doesn't mean the rest of us have to be fooled into it.
Yeah.
It just, I think it's a way for people to sound more confident and more successful than they are. It's just another sales tactic, for people to make themselves look better online. And whatever, that's fine, I guess. Do what you want to. But I don't buy into it at all. I don't subscribe to that type of thinking. And anytime I hear somebody saying that, like, they manifested something in their lives just by thinking about it or writing about it, that's crap.
Yeah, a point I didn't get to in that Vox story at the end of it is, like, psychologists are basically responding to it. They're like, no, this isn't real. But, if it makes you feel better, if it makes you happy, okay, that's good.
Right.
And I get that to a point. But then at the same time, like...
how much fantasy can you live in?
Right.
In your own life? Like,
right.
You have to still remain connected to reality. And there is a way that you could take this quote-unquote manifestation to such a level that you become completely disconnected with reality. Like, just thinking that things are going to come to you and things are going to happen to you, expecting that to happen and not doing anything to make it so. You could get yourself into a lot of trouble that way.
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, I think, because I feel like the aftershocks, and maybe that's the best word to use, the aftershocks of this, is it's creating a bunch of self-centered fucks, for one. Okay, because, again, they think everything just exists to be the plaything of their thought processes, which is fucking horseshit. Okay? It's like, oh, yeah, I want to attract this other person into my life. Oh, so clearly you're going to bring an amazing person into your life because you have so much self-respect for them when you're just playing them like a puppeteer in your mind. Like that, like what kind of self-respect is that? Or what kind of respect for that other person is there? And why would you get a great person? Okay, I would argue a great person would be someone who has self-respect. If they're just somebody who gets played by the strings. I mean, this is just... It's not even a matter of logic, just the circular thinking. I mean, it's nuts, So it creates self-centeredness, but also I feel like it's not that it detaches you from the objective reality around you, because nothing can really do that. If you're going to get hit by a truck, you get hit by a truck because that truck's fucking real. Okay? But it makes you delusional, self-delusional. And that is a whole other problem, So anyway, very worried about this trend on the internet. And again, I think it only works because of the fact that it's the internet that, and social media particularly is being transmitted by.
Yeah, and I'm a really big believer in harmony, like living in harmony with our reality.
Yes.
And that extends to the universe as a whole.
Right.
Because that is ultimately what nature is.
Right.
And in order to have a harmonious existence, you have to work with the universe. And it kind of goes back to conversations that you've had in the past about being part of this co-creative process with the universe.
Yes.
Like, yes, you can manifest certain things, but you also have to help out the universe by doing whatever amount of work on your part.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to, again, it's respecting yourself. And when you genuinely respect yourself, you automatically respect others. Like, you really do. I think it just happens, and not just others, but also your surroundings. Animals, blades of grass, even, all of these things. And then when you have that respect, are things going to come into your life? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, we're born into this really harsh universe, and there's a lot of challenges that we face, even just basic survival. Maybe not as many now, because we live in a world that is, that cushions a lot of the harshness of natural reality. But, historically, throughout our lives, we face a lot of challenges and learn to respect nature.
Yeah.
Like, everybody knows how dangerous Mother Nature can be.
Yeah.
But also, through those challenges, learning that we can face those challenges successfully and come out as stronger, better people, we grow to respect ourselves as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that level of respect deflects negativity. Or it doesn't invite it as much. So, anyway, that's that.
We're closing that subject for now?
Yeah, I think that's good for now. But, yeah, I see this. I go, when I see it, I'm livid. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah, my eyes glaze over.
Yeah.
I can't even listen to it.
Yeah, and I hate it too, because I work in PR, and I know a PR campaign when I see one. And I know what's beyond those PR campaigns, or what's behind those PR campaigns, and I know that these people aren't real. Like, and it's one of the things I've really come to hate the internet for, is that you can fake it so hard. People were faking it before, I know, but like now anybody can fucking fake it, and I mean we have such a fucked up. I mean, we're recording this. What's today? Today, January 6th.
January 6th.
You want to talk about a moment in time that has a skew, like, so, well, what was it, 2 years ago now?
Yeah.
Are we on the second year anniversary?
The anniversary
of the insurrection?
The insurrection of the White House, where a bunch of people got together thinking they were going to create some revolution.
Yeah.
And all they really managed to do was, like, invade the White House, mess up a few
Congress.
desks.
Yeah, like they walked through Congress.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, not the White House, but yeah.
Mess up a few desks.
Yep.
Take some pictures.
Yep.
And then they left. It's like, you didn't even do anything. Because they didn't have a goal in mind.
No, but I mean, this is, and yeah, look, this was happening before the internet. Like, you could, a great television producer could frame anything any way they wanted and project something as reality any way they wanted with limited footage, right? But like, this is one of those situations where there is this widespread belief that some kind of terrible, horrible, even violent event occurred 2 years ago on January 6th when, man, nothing happened.
It's so funny to think about it. Like, it's such a big deal, but like, it's just a crowd of people went into a place they shouldn't have.
Yeah. Even then, like, well, are they American citizens? And if we were to play by, these conventional rules of citizenry, no, they should be able to walk through there. They should be able to go through those desks, because last time I checked, those people were supposed, that being
They're
Congress
public
critters,
servants.
were supposed to be representing those very people.
Yeah.
I mean, oh boy, like this. I mean, it's actually what got me kicked off of Twitter, because I shared the picture at the time, like they banned my account, because I shared a picture of like all these representatives or whatever cowering behind their desks and pews and everything. And I'm like, wow, you pansies, like you chicken shit fucks,
Yeah, these are the people that you serve coming to tell you that they're displeased, and you can't even face them.
Right. Or, these are the people who tell other Americans to go to war. And it's like,
you're sending people to their deaths.
Yeah, and you're hiding behind
yours.
a fucking chair. You loser. Oh, man. I don't know how we're ever going to get it to this point. But at some point, like, we have just... I think it got to the point where people realized that TV wasn't reality. Maybe we never got to that point. I thought we were kind of getting there. But hopefully we get to the point someday that, like, no, the internet does not reflect reality at all. In fact, there's nothing real that's going on there. Maybe we'll get to that. But anyway, speaking of fictional realities, you and I, let's not spend a ton of time on this. I know we got things to do. But you and I went and saw Aquaman 2. What did you think of this movie?
Man, I mean, it wasn't as overstimulating as the first one, but it was still pretty overstimulating.
See, now, it's not saying if it's good or bad. You're saying overstimulating.
Right, so it's a DC Comics based movie.
Yep. Jason Momoa doing his thing one more time.
Yep. And Amber
But you're a
Heard,
fan of Momoa. Is that fair?
I know you're a major fan.
Well, I'm a fan, yeah.
I've watched Jason Momoa in other TV series, including Stargate. That's true.
Woo, yes. Anyway, but I mean, you know, he's got a presence. He's good. Like, he's enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, he's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got charisma.
Right. Okay, continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting movie. Lots of Atlantean magic. I don't know that it was necessarily like a powerful movie. We were talking about it on the way home, and I think the term that I used to describe it was heavy-handed, because a lot of the messaging in this movie made it feel like a Disney movie, in the sense that there's just these forced lines where people say things that draw them closer together as family and loved ones.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the movie is just a bunch of nonsense. But there are these moments where there is this heavy-handed messaging, like, just don't give up, just keep trying. Single parents are the real heroes.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Something else that was really confusing about this movie, like, I don't know what kind of lifestyle they're trying to push, but Aquaman loves Guinness. And he eats potato chips, even though
burgers
super greasy burgers. Even though he's massively jacked Jason Momoa, who doesn't look like he has an ounce of fat on his body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't, and look, I'm not like trying to do any kind of like vegetarian or vegan preaching here, but you're the king of Atlantis, right? And there's all these different species. In fact, there's even like giant crustaceans. Like, how do you stay a meat eater when you have talking crabs?
Yeah, and you have to like work with a cephalopod to extract your brother from prison.
Right, like this octopus is like this amazing, has saved your life multiple times, and then what, you go and get sushi? Like, or the sashimi plate, which usually includes an octopus. Whatever. It's a comic book movie. It doesn't need to make sense. But, yeah, anyway, his lifestyle was very incongruous. Right.
It felt a little out of focus in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think this movie went through an ass ton of re-edits. I think there's whole storylines missing from this. Yeah.
There probably is. Because, again, they cut Amber Heard out of 90% of the movie.
Yeah, for reasons that for reasons, that are out there in the cultural zeitgeist.
Yeah, because she publicly humiliated herself.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Which, by the way, is just weird to me because everybody still loves Johnny Depp. Like, when we went to see Hollywood Vampires, everybody was cheering for Johnny Depp.
Oh, it was hard.
More than they were for Alice Cooper.
Yes. Yeah, which is insane. Or Joe Perry, for that matter. One of the greatest guitarists of all time.
Yeah. Anyway, please
yeah, very weird. Yeah, no. Yeah, I mean, I'll add a little color on this. Aquaman, the first movie, which there had never been an Aquaman movie made before. There had been like an on-air TV pilot that had been done. He'd been on varying cartoons or whatever. Speaking as a lifelong comic book fan, and particularly of DC, Aquaman, he's had his moments where like he'd be interesting for about 6 issues, but he's kind of a boring character. Like, he really does just talk to fish. Okay? He only becomes interesting when, he becomes like the king of this, of like, say, Atlantis, of this large kingdom and all this. Even then, he's not that interesting. And really, he's just DC's copy of Namor, the submariner.
Which, talking to fish would be really fascinating, but it doesn't make for a great action movie.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, because like Marvel's version of this character, that being Namor, is actually really interesting. And like, he kind of steals Reed Richards' wife from the Fantastic Four and all this stuff. Like, there's actual like characterization and everything. Aquaman himself is not that great of a character. Okay. In my opinion. But that first movie, wow. In fact, I said it to you earlier. As Dragon Force is to music, Aquaman was to movies. Like, that movie is just so bombastic. It's so epic. It's like every Lord of the Rings movie in one, and somehow it works really well. It has all the stylings of Tron Legacy. It's a tremendous sound. That movie did billions. Like, that was a huge film. A success on any level. You know, that first film. And honestly, when I heard they were making a sequel, I'm like, yeah, well, of course you're going to make a sequel, because the last movie it's one of the biggest movies in history. But how do you top that? Where do you go? What do you do after that? And I don't think the directors or the writers knew an answer. You know, like, the real answer would be you do a trilogy and you bring the character down in the second film. But because DC is rebooting everything, James Gunn has taken over, and I don't think we're going to get an Aquaman 3. This is like the last movie of the Snyderverse, effectively. It's all very confusing on how they want to do this. I don't think you could go there. Like, when we saw The Flash, a movie I enjoyed, at the end of it, there's an end credits scene where Flash is kind of dragging Aquaman around because he's so wasted. He's so drunk. And he, like, falls asleep in a puddle even, you know? And when I saw that, I was expecting an Aquaman 2, he's going to have a drinking problem. And I still think there are scenes in this movie, in Aquaman 2, that point at that was a storyline. Like, where he's, like, falling asleep on the throne, and his crown even, like, falls over, and he just gets up like, oh, yeah, oh, no, that's great, yeah, you know? I think this was meant to be kind of a dark chapter for the character. And they totally threw that out. And they might have even completely re-edited, you know, the film. But the problem with this movie, ultimately, for me, is you can't top the first one. Like, the first one was an entire trilogy in itself. The first one was so massive. There's nowhere else you can go. There's nothing you can do. Unless, again, you were tying it into a larger story, or, you know, either a larger story for the character, or you were tying it in and bringing in, like, what could have made this movie great is if they brought in other, like, members of the Justice League. I mean, whether it's Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, I don't know, whoever, you know, that they wanted to bring in, that could have made this movie more interesting, but they weren't going to do that because, again, they're killing this whole universe.
How did you feel about the global warming message?
I thought I was watching a movie from the 90s. Like, that, I mean, look, I consider myself, you know, like, I don't like to use the word environmentalist, ecologist maybe. Like, I am super concerned about, I'm you know, into naturism. I mean, I'm super concerned about the environment, you know, about the entire universe for that matter. And I thought that, I mean, it's like good to have it there, but they're basically using orichalcum as like akin to nuclear energy. Like, it just felt like messaging that was decades out of date. Because also that nuclear argument doesn't make any sense anymore. And even, like, diehard environmentalists admit now, no, we're wrong about nuclear. It's actually a good thing. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was more than that. It was honestly more reminiscent of coal to me than it was nuclear, because they were burning it to heat the atmosphere. It wasn't like it was spreading radiation. It was just heating the atmosphere.
Fair. That's fair. Yep.
And there were a lot of events happening that, you know, have been in major news recently. Like, you know, huge forest fires that are out of control, flooding, earthquakes, all caused by rising ocean temperatures. You know, this is all stuff that is relevant right now. More now than in the 90s, because obviously we've had 30 years for global warming to progress. So we're seeing more of the symptoms now.
Sure, yeah, but I think to your point, and you used this term earlier, even when we were talking earlier after seeing the film, it was heavy-handed. It was way too heavy-handed. It was too on the nose. It was too direct. Like, that's not good movie making, you know, to just, like, say it so outright, in my opinion. I just, it didn't feel right. Like, I think it's a good thing to get out there. Like, yeah, talk about that. But they went too hard. Like, I thought I was watching Captain Planet.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, there was one line in the movie that I really liked, and I felt like it was on the nose as far as what is happening. But it was actually Aquaman's brother, after he rescues him from prison and tells him about, like, the state of things. And he says, it's like they put a gun to the head of the world and pulled the trigger without even making any demands.
Right.
And I think that is kind of what... There's some truth to that when it comes to global warming. Like, industries are continuing pollutive practices, even despite knowing how damaging they are. And they didn't make any demands. They're just continuing to do it.
Yeah. That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. It is a good line. I hadn't thought about it that way, though. Yeah. But I mean, at the same time, like, I don't feel like there's any real resolution to that.
Because at the end it's like Atlantean and surface dweller technology can combine with, like, the UN and Atlantis joined forces. We can solve global warming.
Yeah, they're all like, oh yeah, I'm here to stand for global unity and all this, and it's like, oh, stop, shut up, you know, like, you can't. This is one of the biggest problems with a lot of these efforts, you know, to try to save the world, you know, and thwart climate change, is there is a complete lack of understanding of regionalism. There's a complete lack of understanding of localism. What works in one place does not work in the other, right? This concept of global unity, no. Like, you know, and basically what I'm saying is, it's like, oh yeah, well, we need to switch to electric cars. Okay, electric cars work great in 3/4 of California. Electric cars do not work well in other parts of the world. You know, like, no, you know, people up in like the Hudson Bay, you know, people up like in northern Canada, no, they need trucks.
Or what about the alternative of that? Is, like, instead of saying we need to switch from internal combustion engines to electric, what about saying, like, we don't know what the answer is right now, but let's immediately stop doing these damaging practices. So you're all going to have to live with some discomfort in your lives, and it's going to be a little bit harder until we figure out a suitable alternative.
Sure.
But just stop doing this thing that is harmful.
Yeah. No, right. I hear that. Yeah. Again, like...
And that's going to force people to live in a more local environment, you know? Because, like, if we didn't have a car, we'd have to scrounge for food within a 10-mile radius of where we're at, you know? We're not going to be traveling 35 miles to whatever major city.
Yeah. I don't think, like... I hear you. Like, people will never go for it, you know, because, again, this gets to that lifestyle obsession, you know? Like, everybody thinks they should be able to have a yacht. And it's like, no, you live in fucking Siberia. You don't get a yacht. You know, like, again, like, people don't understand because they're so detached from their immediate surroundings, they have no understanding of what's actually best for them, or they don't know to move, or, you know, whatever the thing is, they want to homogenize everything. Yeah. You know, one size fits all solutions are never going to work, but that's all that ever gets proposed.
Yeah, it's like, all right, if you want to live in a place that gets 120 during the summers, like, you know, Houston, Texas, for example, how about instead of running your air conditioner all summer, you just, like, build a house that actually cools itself. It doesn't absorb all of the sunlight and heat coming in. Like, why does everybody live in the same house, basically?
Right.
Across the U.S., all of our houses are pretty standard.
Yes.
But that doesn't work for every single climate. Like, you know, some people would be better off living in caves.
Right.
Some people would be better off living underground.
Right.
Some people would be better off living in tree houses.
Right. Yeah, no, you're completely right. But this is the thing. Like, okay, everybody needs hot water. Yep. Got you. Okay, so there are some universal needs, perhaps, in the modern day. Okay, so everybody needs hot water. Here's the thing: in Florida, you can just take a tank of water. You can set the tank of water on the roof of your house, paint the fucker black. That'll get you hot water. Yeah. Most of the year, if not all of it. Actually, it'll do a very good job of that. That doesn't work in New York, and so it's like, okay, but that's my point. The solutions are different based upon your locality, based upon your region. Like
if you have geothermal vents nearby you,
right.
You're lucky.
Yeah, exactly.
The earth just makes hot water.
Yeah, sure. So that's the thing. But this is never, whatever the UN says, the UN, whatever the UN recommends for how we're going to solve this, there are all these broad swath, okay, this is what everybody's going to do, when everybody can't do the same thing, nor should they. I hate that shit. Every time I hear global unity and all that, it just drives me up the wall. Another thing that's being said in movies now isn't even global peace. Now it's global stability. It's like, oh, now I know what this is all about.
Yeah, there's no agenda being pushed there.
No. Oh, man, fuck stability. But anyway, so I think this speaks to a larger problem, getting back to the film. With the film, there's no real, speaking of agendas, there's no real agenda for whatever the evil is in this movie, whatever the antagonist is. It's just a thing, and it has to get beaten. But there's no real, what's the motivation for Necros? That was the name of the other
his
kingdom.
Is, vengeance. The
brother.
The Manta.
Oh, Black Manta. Yeah, okay, Manta. I get his.
Yeah, cause he just wants to kill Aquaman because Aquaman killed his father.
Right.
But then he becomes possessed by this ancient king who's trapped in ice, and the ancient king just wants to come out and party with his hordes,
But what? Give me more. What is this villain? I mean, it's not a problem with this movie. It's a problem with Hollywood across the board. Lately, is we don't have motivations for the villains. They're just an obstacle. They're not really a person. They're not a character. Which probably feeds into what we were talking about earlier, where everybody's like, no, everything's just an NPC. And everything's everything exists for me, and it's not an actual objective other.
Yeah, he's just some guy who will, do anything to be freed of his ice prison.
Yeah, but why did you really get frozen? What? What was the argument between you and Atlan? I don't. Just tell me.
He was power crazy. That's all we get.
Yeah. Anyway, so it makes for in the previous film, to its credit, okay, I understood what Ocean Master was about. He didn't want to lose his power. There's a character there. I understand it, but the villains in this, the evil, just didn't make any sense. Or it didn't have any. I didn't get the motivation. I didn't understand why. What do you want Orc Helcom for? What? Anyway, so I guess to wrap it up, if we're did you like the music in this?
I don't really remember the music.
Yeah, I did not like the use of 70s songs. There were a lot of 70s songs in it. They're good. They're great songs, but I thought it felt out of place, overused. I didn't understand it. As to where the last movie did a great job with it, like I said, a very Daft Punk style score. That's still kind of here in this one, but it's mixed in with other shit, and I don't understand who that's for.
Yeah, I
because
feel like
kids don't listen to that music.
That's kind of a common thing to do now, though.
Mm-hmm.
And you say kids don't listen to that music. I think actually some kids do because their millennial or older parents bring them to these shows or play this classic rock and roll.
Maybe.
And then the kids are like, oh, what's that? That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So there are a few songs that kids do know that are classic rock.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really what it's about. It's it's kind of novelty for the young generation.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, an interesting point. I feel like most of the people in the theater with us were old.
Yeah,
I mean,
true.
old, 60s, or older, which is weird. I don't get that. I mean, maybe they've just been comic book fans forever like me, but I don't know. But that was interesting. Yeah, I don't know how this movie's doing in the box office. It's probably tanking, and it's probably because no one wants to invest in a universe that isn't going to exist anymore, for one. The reviews, I know, most of them aren't that great, and I can see why. It does feel like a pointless film. Like, you made such a magical film with the first one. I understand why they did a sequel, but at the same time, I never would have done one. Like, you can't top that.
Yeah, a lot of weird elements that don't get explanation in this movie, and I think that's what people need, to really be invested.
Yeah, like, go ahead and do the world building. You got a lot more you can get into. I mean, you have this entire, like, underwater world.
And then also there's, like, a jungle where these creatures have been mutated by the burning orichalcum.
Yeah.
We don't know how or why, but, like,
they're
there's...
just huge.
Yeah, everything is giant. The grasshoppers, the mice, the cockroaches, like, it's all huge.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to come out and say it. I'd be generous giving this movie a 6. I mean, there's points where I laughed during it. I can say that much. Maybe that's keeping me from giving it a 5, but there's almost no point to watching this movie. Like, I don't really walk away with much of anything.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, and that's sad. Because I really loved the DCEU. Like, I really, really digged everything Zack Snyder was doing. I've really enjoyed this saga. And
Jason Momoa seemed like he had fun making
yeah,
the
he
movie.
loves. He clearly he loves doing it. I mean, and there's even movies that Aquaman are in that you haven't even watched yet. That I'd love to watch with you. And he's great in it. And that's the pity too. It's like, fuck, man, he actually did a good job. I mean, he's not entirely believable for some reasons you mentioned earlier and some others, but he's done a great job. And yeah, it's a shame. What do you give it? What do you got out of 10?
Probably the same as you.
Really, 6?
Yeah. I don't see myself ever watching this movie again.
No, not unless there's like an alternate cut of some kind.
Even then, I don't think I would care enough.
Yeah.
Like, just show me the deleted scenes.
Yeah. Another quick bonus. They did let Nicole Kidman at least be old. That was nice.
Sorta.
Yeah.
I mean, she still looks like she's had some work done, but she had a few old woman kind of looking things on her face.
She had moments. Yeah, where it's like, oh yeah, no, she's old. And I don't say that disparagingly. I'm just saying, like, I dig it when they'll let old women, like, kick ass in a film, or not kick ass, but like at least exist and recognize that they exist. That this has been a problem in comic book movies particularly, is that like an actress who's been playing a role for say 5-6 years or something, suddenly she hits 35 and oh no, we have to recast. Sorry. And it's like, why? What? Because she has some wrinkles? What a shame.
Yeah, and she's playing against Dolph Lundgren, who obviously is old.
Very old.
Like, yeah, you can see it on his face.
Yeah. But he was fun, Yeah. It's Dolph. Anyway, okay, yeah, so 6 out of 10. Yeah, this is just there's no point to watching this. That's really how I walk away from it.
It was entertaining in some ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, there wasn't really anything inspiring about this movie.
No, and it ultimately doesn't add to like this world of Atlantis that was so well built and fleshed out in the first movie. It's very disappointing.
There's barely any time in Atlantis to begin with.
Yeah. I wondered about, like, I thought that was strange because that's what made the first movie so cool. It was like the action just didn't fucking stop in this amazing, neon world. Yeah. All right. You want to wrap this one up?
Yeah, I think we about covered everything.
Yeah.
We missed out on talking about the Jedi, but I think that deserves its own show.
We'll talk about that next time. I want you there. I want you to like kind of, not. I mean, you're in. I've forced you into Star Wars. No.
You did. It's funny. I was kind of talking about this with one of our mutual friends yesterday. Yeah, I was never really a Star Wars fan. I just ended up learning a lot about it because you love it so much and you wanted to share it with me.
Yeah. But I want you there for that because you have that different perspective. And you also ask great questions. So
I try.
Yeah, and I mean, you always deliver just the most tremendous insights. So anyway, if you want more of those insights, Sovryn Tech X will be back. And Ellen, of course, always great having you on.
Thanks for having me.
And don't forget, fundraiser.sovryntech.com if you want to help with the next or a part of the evolution of everything we've been doing here for over a decade. Really exciting stuff to come. So fundraiser.sovryntech.com, and we will see all of you on the other side.
Woo!
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Captain is the sweetest cat, and he's crawling all over your electronics.
Boy, he is everywhere right now. That little catch.